Tonight we enter southern Mesopotamia, where the earth once carried cities older than nearly every surviving kingdom. In the early 20th century, excavators working among ruined temples uncovered clay tablets pressed with signs from a vanished world. Scholars at Oxford, Yale, and major museums spent decades reconstructing fragments from places such as Nippur, Uruk, and ancient Ur. The tablets preserved hymns, legal records, temple accounts, royal claims, and stories about gods who govern the sky and soil. Among those divine names, Enlil appears with overwhelming authority. He commands storms, crowns rulers, separates heaven from earth, and speaks within the council of the council of the gods. Yet the same traditions place him beneath a distant power whose presence is quieter, older, and harder to approach. That silence creates our mystery. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You may also share your location and local time as we begin this journey together. The room around you slowly disappears. You stand beneath a sky without electric light, while the plain stretches outward in darkness. The air smells of warm dust, reeds, and water drifting from a nearby canal. Somewhere beyond the mud brick walls, sandals scrape against packed earth, then fade into stillness.
Head rises, a temple platform broad and pale beneath the stars.
Its stairway climbs toward a sanctuary where only priests and rulers may enter. Oil lamps flicker beside the doorway, casting weak circles across painted plaster and heavy wooden beams. The building seems ordinary from a distance, yet every stone and brick carries the weight of divine ownership. This is not merely a house of worship. To the people who live here, the temple is the earthly residence of a god. Meals are prepared, garments are woven, incense is burned, and musicians perform before a statue believed to receive divine presence. Records from ancient cities confirm that temples controlled land, labor, livestock, and large stores of grain. Priests managed these resources through careful accounts written onto damp clay. Religion and administration were not separate systems. They were woven together like reed fibers in a single mat. The gods ruled through institutions. You move closer to the sanctuary. Though no guard stops you in this imagined passage, inside, the air grows cooler, scented with wax smoke and bitter resin. A narrow chamber opens ahead, where a divine figure sits beneath a canopy. The face is calm. The eyes are unnaturally large. Such statues often stared forward with an intensity that modern viewers find strange. Their wide eyes may suggest eternal attention, reverence, or constant awareness before the divine. They do not sleep, and they do not turn away. Yet Enlil himself is not shown here. His power lives in names, titles, hymns, and decisions. He is described as Lord of the Wind, ruler of destinies, and guardian of divine order. His principal sanctuary stood at Nippur, a city whose political importance often exceeded its military strength. Kings sought recognition there. A ruler might control armies and fields, but divine legitimacy still mattered. Royal inscriptions repeatedly claimed that kingship had been granted by the gods. Enlil's approval could transform conquest into sacred duty, which is convenient for any monarch holding a spear. The arrangement was elegant. Power descended from heaven, passed through temples, and settled upon the king. Ordinary people then paid taxes, supplied labor, and tried not to annoy anyone holding either divine favor or a bronze weapon. Yet above Enlil stood Anu. Anu was associated with the highest heaven, the remote realm beyond storms and clouds. He appears as a source of authority, a father of gods, and a figure whose approval could define the limits of divine power. Unlike Enlil, Anu often remains distant. He does not rush through every tale. He does not dominate each conflict with constant action. His authority feels reserved, almost withdrawn. as though intervention would diminish the weight of his position. This is where unease begins. Loud power announces itself through thunder, armies, and decrees. Greater power may require nothing more than silence. A command feared by everyone does not need to be repeated. Imagine the Divine Council assembling. The chamber is vast, though its walls belong more to myth than architecture. Gods take their places according to rank, each associated with a city, river, planet, storm, craft, or ancient force. Messengers wait near the entrance. Scribes prepare to record decisions. Enlil speaks with confidence. His voice carries across the hall, steady and forceful. He presents judgments, proposes actions, and expects obedience. He is accustomed to being feared by mortals and respected by gods. Then the room changes. No door opens. No thunder breaks. Yet attention shifts toward the highest seat. The Anunnaki, a group of major deities whose roles varied across texts and periods, are often described in connection with divine authority and judgment. They do not form one perfectly consistent council across every surviving tradition. Ancient religion changed across cities and centuries, just as human institutions always change. Scholars continue debating how the term should be understood in different compositions. In some texts, the Anunnaki appear as leading gods. In others, they are linked with the underworld or collective judgment. The evidence refuses to sit neatly in one box. Ancient scribes were inconsiderate that way. Still, a pattern remains visible. The gods operate within hierarchy. Enlil may issue commands, but he does not exist beyond structure. His authority comes from an order older than any single decision. Anu represents the summit of that order, though perhaps not its deepest origin. Your eyes drift toward the empty throne. It is raised above the others, carved from dark wood and decorated with metal fittings. No figure sits there, yet no one dares ignore it. The emptiness seems deliberate. A fringe idea sometimes appears in modern retellings, suggesting that absent divine rulers reflect memories of visitors who departed the earth. There is no accepted archaeological evidence supporting such claims, yet the idea remains popular because absence invites imagination. What is not seen becomes limitless. Ancient people may have understood this instinct better than we do. A visible statue can be measured, damaged, moved, or replaced. A hidden authority remains untouched by ordinary weakness. Perhaps Anu's distance preserved his supremacy. Perhaps Enlil feared not physical defeat, but loss of legitimacy. A storm god can overpower cities, yet even storms must move beneath the sky. Enlil's realm is immense, but it is still contained within something larger. You hear a low sound outside the sanctuary. It may be wind passing through reeds. It may be a priest chanting beyond the wall. It may be nothing more than your own breathing within the silence. The lamp flame bends. For a moment, the shadows resemble figures gathered around a table. Their faces remain indistinct, but their posture suggests caution. They are waiting for a judgment no one wishes to hear. Records from Nippur show that Enlil's temple remained a central religious institution for many centuries. Dynasties rose, languages shifted, and foreign rulers adopted local traditions. Through these changes, the sacred authority of the city endured. That endurance matters. It reveals that divine hierarchy was not merely storytelling. It shaped diplomacy, kingship, landholding, and the daily movement of wealth. People built entire political systems around invisible relationships among gods. Yet those relationships preserved uncertainty. Was Enlil truly afraid of Anu, or simply bound by rank? Did divine obedience resemble human obedience, filled with ambition and resentment? Or did later scribes project court politics onto heaven, creating gods who behaved like kings and officials? The tablets do not answer clearly. They offer titles, scenes, arguments, and fragments. They reveal enough to suggest structure, but not enough to explain every sense. Between those fragments lies a space where interpretation begins. You remain before the dark throne, Enlil's authority seems vast yet strangely conditional. The council may obey his voice, but another presence defines whether that voice carries lawful weight. And perhaps the most feared being is not the one who shouts. Perhaps it is the one whose silence makes every other god listen. You walk through the outer court of Enlil's great sanctuary while dawn gathers over the plain. The bricks beneath your feet still hold the coolness of night. Temple workers move through the dim light carrying baskets, jars, woven cloth, and freshly cut reeds. A priest lifts a bronze bowl toward the eastern sky while smoke curls from a small altar. Nothing here feels accidental. Every doorway, offering, and spoken title belongs to an order maintained through repetition. The city awakens beneath that order, and Enlil stands near its center. His name is carried through hymns as master of the wind. This does not mean a gentle breeze moving across barley fields. His wind is the force that opens the sky, shakes doors, drives clouds, and sends dust over the horizon. It can bring rain, yet it can also flatten roofs and bury roads beneath sand. You hear it now. The sound presses against the temple walls, low and restless. Like an animal circling beyond the gate, loose straw slides across the courtyard. A hanging cloth pulls against its rope. For the people of Mesopotamia, such weather is never merely weather. The natural world speaks through divine intention. A storm may signal anger, approval, warning, or change. A failed harvest can suggest disorder in heaven, while good rainfall may confirm that proper rituals have been accepted. Enlil's power therefore enters daily life. He is not confined to mythic gatherings or distant ceremonial language. His authority touches grain, canals, royal succession, military fortune, and the fragile balance between flood and drought. Records from ancient Nippur confirm that rulers from different dynasties restored Enlil's temple and claimed his favour. Even kings who ruled from other cities sought recognition at his sanctuary. They understood that military victory alone could appear temporary without sacred approval. A king may seize a throne, keeping it requires a better story. Royal inscriptions often present conquest as an act supported by divine command. Enlil grants strength, chooses rulers, widens territories, and places enemies beneath a king's feet. Such claims transform political ambition into heavenly duty. The method is familiar. Human power speaks with greater confidence when it claims a voice from above. You enter a long chamber where scribes sit beside low tables. Their reed tools press marks into soft clay, recording deliveries of barley, wool, oil, and livestock. The work appears quiet, yet it supports an enormous institution. Temple households employ farmers, herders, brewers, bakers, craftsmen, musicians, guards, and administrators. Vast quantities of goods pass through these systems, binding divine worship to practical control. Enlil's authority is measured in prayer, but also in storage jars. A council decree proves that ancient temples could regulate labor and property with considerable precision. Lists preserve rations distributed to workers, offerings assigned to festivals, and resources transferred between officials. The sacred and the ordinary share one ledger. You can almost hear the scratch of reeds against clay, followed by the soft tap of a completed tablet placed aside to dry. Each mark strengthens a system that reaches from heavenly order into human routine. Enlil governs through structure. His temple, known as the Mountain House, carries a name that suggests elevation, stability, and cosmic importance. Mesopotamia offers few natural mountains across its southern plains, so a sacred mountain must be built through architecture and imagination. Raised platforms and temple towers lift divine space above ordinary streets. The ascent is physical, but also symbolic. The higher you climb, the farther you move from common noise and human uncertainty. At the summit, the god receives honor. Below, the city waits. This hierarchy appears within divine stories as well. Enlil occupies a position of commanding influence among major gods. His word can settle disputes, assign destinies, and authorize punishment. Yet his authority does not always produce affection. Powerful gods are often feared before they are loved. Their protection comes with demands, and their favour may be withdrawn without warning. Worshippers approach them with praise because praise is safer than silence. A surviving hymn can sound beautiful and uneasy at once. It may celebrate Enlil as wise, mighty, and just, while also acknowledging that his anger overwhelms resistance. Such language resembles the careful praise offered to kings whose generosity depends upon obedience. You sense the comparison immediately. The divine court mirrors the human court. Officials stand in rank. Messengers carry commands. Lesser figures wait for permission to speak. Rewards descend from above, while punishment travels quickly downward. Some historians believe Mesopotamian divine assemblies reflect real political institutions, including councils of elders and royal courts. Others caution that myth cannot be reduced to simple copies of government. The question remains unsettled. Did people imagine heaven through earthly politics, or did they organize earthly politics according to imagined heaven? Perhaps each system shaped the other until no clear boundary remained. You pass into another courtyard where musicians prepare for ceremony. A drum rests on a wooden frame. A singer adjusts a garment embroidered with small geometric patterns. Nearby, a servant carries a tray of bread shaped for ritual presentation. One quirky detail from temple life is that divine statues received meals like noble residents. Food was placed before them, removed later, and redistributed through temple personnel. The god did not physically chew, of course, which simplified table manners considerably. Yet the ritual mattered. Feeding the divine image affirmed the relationship between city and god. Clothing, washing, music, incense, and offerings treated the deity as a living ruler whose household required constant care. Enlil's presence was maintained through service. Such service also placed responsibility upon humanity. If rituals failed, the disorder might follow. If priests neglected the calendar, ignored omens, or offered improper gifts, the consequences could reach beyond the sanctuary. A storm might come, a canal might break, a king might fall ill. Fear therefore entered worship quietly, hidden beneath beauty and routine. You pass beside a wall where painted patterns have faded into pale stains. The plaster feels rough beneath your fingertips. Somewhere outside, a donkey complains with remarkable bitterness, proving that sacred cities still contain ordinary annoyances. The sound fades, and the deeper stillness returns. Enlil's role as a giver of kingship reveals the full reach of his authority. He does not merely protect rulers, he helps define who deserves to rule. Kingship in Mesopotamian tradition is often described as descending from heaven. It arrives as a divine institution, not a human invention. A ruler therefore presents himself as chosen, appointed, or favoured within an older sacred framework. Enlil becomes guardian of legitimacy. His support can raise a dynasty. His displeasure can explain its collapse. When one city defeats another, scribes may describe the event as a transfer of divine favour rather than simple military success. History becomes theology written by survivors. Still, Enlil is not always portrayed as calm or perfectly controlled. Some narratives show him making severe decisions, particularly when humanity becomes troublesome. Noise, disorder, and disobedience provoke responses that threaten entire populations. These stories reveal tension within his power. He protects civilization, yet he can also become its greatest danger. He grants order, but his methods may seem harsh even to other gods. Authority turns frightening when it believes destruction can restore balance. You feel this tension in the temple itself. The sanctuary offers safety, yet every ritual acknowledges vulnerability. The city depends upon a god whose favour cannot be taken for granted. Perhaps this is why Enlil appears so commanding. A ruler who controls storms, kingship, and destiny must display certainty. Hesitation would weaken the entire structure built around his name, yet certainty can conceal the fear. The stronger the public command, the more carefully hidden the private limit may become. Enlil speaks as Lord because countless lives depend upon believing that his voice is final. Across the courtyard, priests lower their heads. A formal proclamation is recited beneath the rising sun. The words identify Enlil as unrivaled among those who govern the inhabited world. His titles accumulate like stones in a fortress wall. Lord of Command, Great Mountain, Decider of Destinies, Father of Lands. Each title enlarges him. Each title also reveals what must be defended. No authority gathers so many names unless memory must be reinforced. No ruler receives endless praise unless loyalty requires renewal. The wind rises again, filling the passage with dust and the scent of dry reeds. You close your eyes while the temple doors groan against their hinges. Enlil's presence surrounds the city. It stands in the grain stores, the royal seal, the priestly chant, and the storm crossing the horizon. His command reaches deeply into both heaven and earth. Yet even this immense power belongs to a system. He may shape the destinies of kings, but he does not stand outside destiny itself. Your fingers hover above a broken clay tablet, its surface crowded with wedge-shaped marks and empty scars. The tablet rests beneath a soft museum lamp, far from the heat that hardened it thousands of years ago. One edge is missing. Several lines vanish into a fracture. A proper name appears once, then disappears entirely. Such silence can feel deliberate. Ancient records rarely survive as complete libraries arranged for modern curiosity. Fire destroys shelves. Floods dissolve walls. Conquerors scatter archives, and later builders reuse ancient bricks. A single missing corner may erase a king, a ritual, or the reason one god feared another. Archaeologists work patiently with these absences. Teams from universities and museums compare fragments across collections, sometimes joining pieces separated for more than a century. A line found in London may complete another held in Philadelphia. A duplicate from Nineveh may clarify a damaged composition from Nippur. Still, not every gap can be restored. You lean closer to the tablet. The marks seem orderly, but the broken spaces interrupt their rhythm. It is like listening to a whispered confession while wind steals every crucial sentence. The missing name begins to matter. Scribes normally identified major gods through titles, symbols, family relationships, and places of worship. Divine names appeared in hymns, offerings, treaties, building inscriptions, and royal prayers. Important powers were repeated because repetition preserved both memory and authority. Yet some beings remain strangely obscure. A deity may appear in one text as a judge, then vanish from the surviving record. Another may survive only through a title whose original meaning remains uncertain. Local gods can disappear when their cities decline, leaving fragments that later scholars struggle to place. Records confirm that Mesopotamian religion contained far more divine names than most popular retellings suggest. Great gods stood beside household spirits, protective figures, disease beings, river powers, divine scribes, gatekeepers, and patrons of particular crafts. The pantheon was crowded. It was also unstable. Dynasties rose and fell, languages changed, and one god could absorb the features of another. A local guardian might become a national power. An older deity might survive only as a title attached to a younger one. Political change altered heaven. You imagine a scribe seated in a dim archive room surrounded by shelves of clay. He copies an older composition onto a fresh tablet, smoothing each line with practiced care. His reed tool pauses over an unfamiliar divine name. Perhaps the sign is damaged. Perhaps the pronunciation is no longer known. Perhaps the name is considered dangerous. Mesopotamian scribes sometimes preserved ancient wording they barely understood, much as later scholars copied sacred language from earlier centuries. Lists and commentaries show intense efforts to explain rare signs, obscure words, and divine titles. A strange name could survive through tradition even after its meaning faded. Yet names carried power. To name a god was to recognize a presence, define a relationship, and invite attention. Ritual speech treated correct naming as essential. A mistaken title could weaken a ceremony, while a secret name might offer protection or control. This belief appears in many ancient cultures, though each tradition handles it differently. A hidden name can suggest intimacy, authority, or danger. The possibility is quietly unknown. What kind of being is addressed only through titles? What presence is acknowledged without being openly summoned? Scholars continue debating whether some obscure divine labels represent separate gods or alternate forms of better-known deities. A title meaning Great Lord, Ancient One, or Hidden Ruler may change identity across time and place. The evidence resists certainty. A priest in one city might understand a title differently from a scribe living centuries later. Modern categories then impose neat boundaries that ancient worshippers may never have recognized. You hear the soft scrape of clay against wood. Another fragment is placed beside the first. Its signs preserve a scene of divine consultation, but the opening lines are gone. The remaining text begins in the middle of a decision. Someone has already objected. Only the reaction survives. Several gods lower their voices. A messenger receives instructions. A ruler waits for judgment. The unnamed authority is not described directly, yet the entire scene bends around an absent presence. This pattern appears often in damaged literature. The central figure may be lost while secondary responses remain. Modern readers then reconstruct the unseen cause from fear obedience or ritual caution. Absence becomes evidence, though never proof. A quirky detail from scribal culture is that students practice by copying proverbs, lists, and even complaints about lazy pupils. Some exercises preserve irritated teachers, hungry apprentices, and young men who preferred the street to their lessons. Ancient education was not always majestic. Still, those students became guardians of memory. They copied divine genealogies, flood accounts, temple hymns, and royal legends. Each copied line carried earlier ideas into a later age. A careless hand could introduce an error, while a careful one could preserve a forgotten title for another 1,000 years. The survival of myth often depended upon tired students. You picture one apprentice, staring at a difficult sign by lamplight. Wax smoke stings his eyes. His wrist aches. The master waits nearby with very limited patience. The student copies the strange name once, then never again. Perhaps this rarity reflects chance, perhaps no mystery exists beyond broken archives and uneven survival. Most ancient texts are lost, so any pattern built from absence must be handled carefully. This is the sober explanation, yet human curiosity naturally gathers around the missing place. A famous god leaves temples, hymns, and royal claims. A feared god may leave avoidance. A power too dangerous to invoke could survive through indirect language. Coded titles, or scenes where others react without naming the cause. It's possible that later scribes intentionally softened older traditions. Religious centers often reshaped inherited myths to honor their own patron gods. A story from one city could be revised when copied elsewhere. Divine reputations were edited. One in good became wiser. Another became less important. A troubling superior could be reduced to a distant ancestor, preserving hierarchy while removing immediate threat. You move through an imagined archive where shelves rise against mud brick walls. Tablets lie in baskets labelled by subject, though the labels are less helpful than modern librarians would prefer. Dust gathers in corners. Mice search for grain and discover only literature. Some tablets contain rituals never intended for public hearing. Others record omens, illnesses, eclipses, and unsettling births among animals. Specialists interpreted these signs because the gods were believed to communicate through patterns hidden within ordinary events. The sky itself became a document. A strange light near the moon might warn of conflict. Unusual weather could announce royal danger. The liver of a sacrificed animal might reveal divine intention through marks and shapes. In such a world, silence was also a sign. If a god did not answer, the absence required interpretation. If a ritual failed, the priest searched for impurity, error, or concealed anger. The unseen was never empty. The missing name on the tablet begins to feel heavier. Perhaps it belonged to Anu under a rare title. Perhaps it referred to fate itself, understood as an impersonal force beyond divine preference. Perhaps it named an older being absorbed into later theology. No single answer survives. The open scholarly question is whether divine hierarchy in these texts reflects one coherent system or many local systems joined imperfectly together. The second possibility may explain contradictions, but it also creates room for forgotten powers. A god can vanish when a city vanishes. A title can lose meaning when a language changes. A fear can remain after its object is forgotten. You step away from the tablet, yet the empty space stays with you. The fracture seems almost intentional beneath the museum light, though reason warns against such temptation. The lost line does not speak. Still, everything around it appears to listen. You step into a chamber that no archaeologist has ever found intact, yet countless tablets allow its shape to gather slowly. The room belongs partly to temple architecture and partly to memory. Its walls rise from polished brick, cool beneath painted bands of black, white, and red. Cedar beams cross the ceiling. Bronze lamps burn with steady flames, releasing a faint smell of oil and heated metal. At the center stands a long table. Around it, the great gods take their places according to rank, function, and ancient privilege. Some arrive as patrons of cities. Others embody rivers, storms, wisdom, fertility, war, healing, or the bright movements of heaven. No one sits casually. Every position matters. A divine council is not merely a gathering of powerful personalities. It is a structure through which order becomes visible. Decisions are spoken, destinies are assigned, and conflicts among divine interests are brought into a formal space. The oldest known Mesopotamian myths repeatedly present gods acting together. Even when one figure dominates the result, they debate crises, approve kingship, judge offences, and determine punishment. This shared authority feels surprisingly political. A scholar from Oxford might describe such scenes through the language of institutions, ritual hierarchy, and social memory. You experience them more simply as a room where even gods must wait their turn. Enlil occupies a commanding place. His presence fills the chamber before he speaks. The air seems tighter near him, as though the wind itself has entered and refuses to settle. His robe falls in heavy folds, and the horned crown upon his head marks divine rank. Across the table sit figures with very different powers. The moon god carries the quiet authority of measured time. The sun god watches with the unsettling patience of a judge. The god of fresh water and clever counsel remains difficult to read, his stillness concealing thought. Messengers stand near the doors. Divine scribes wait beside trays of clay. This detail is not merely decorative. Mesopotamian administration depended upon written records, and the imagined world of the gods often reflected that concern. Decisions mattered because they were fixed, witnessed, and remembered. A decree becomes stronger when recorded. You hear the first voice rise through the chamber. It concerns humanity. People have multiplied across the plain. Their canals spread like silver threads beneath the sun. Their cities grow crowded, loud, ambitious, and increasingly difficult to control. The gods listen without interrupting. Some regard humanity as useful. Others view human noise, appetite, and disorder as an intolerable disturbance. The disagreement is not sentimental. It concerns labor, sacrifice, balance, and the stability of the created world. The council must decide. Such scenes reveal a mainstream historical fact about Mesopotamian literature. Divine assemblies often serve as places where cosmic decisions receive collective approval, even when responsibility later settles upon one god. Authority is shared but not equally. A younger deity may speak with courage, yet rank limits how far that courage can travel. An older god may remain silent until one sentence changes the direction of the entire debate. You feel the tension in the pauses. Enlil proposes a severe response. His argument rests upon order. If humanity exceeds its plate, then correction becomes necessary. Flood, famine, disease, or political ruin may appear not as cruelty but as restoration. This logic is cold. It is also familiar. Rulers throughout history have described punishment as a defense of order. Their language changes, but authority often prefers to call itself balance. The god of wisdom objects carefully and does not challenge Enlil with open contempt. That would be reckless, even among immortals. Instead, he questions method, consequence, and proportion. Could the disturbance be reduced without destroying those who sustain the temples? Could warning replace annihilation? Could humans be controlled rather than erased? The council shifts. A lamp crackles. Some gods glance toward the highest seat, where approval carries more weight than argument. Others lower their eyes, perhaps unwilling to become visible during disagreement. One quirky detail from ancient myth is that gods can behave like exhausted officials trapped in a difficult meeting. They complain, negotiate, assign unpleasant tasks, and occasionally regret decisions once consequences arrive. Immortality apparently does not improve committee work, yet the humor fades quickly. These decisions shape rivers, harvests, dynasties, and entire populations. A divine disagreement is never confined to the chamber. It falls upon the human world as weather, disease, victory, or ruin. You move along the outer wall, unseen by those gathered. Carved panels show winged figures holding vessels of flowing water. Sacred trees rise between symmetrical guardians. Rosettes, stars, and horned crowns identify forces beyond ordinary human rank. The visual language feels controlled and repetitive. Repetition creates authority. The same symbols appear on seals, reliefs, ritual objects, and royal monuments because power depends upon recognition. A king standing beneath a divine emblem becomes part of a larger order. A council arranged by rank becomes proof that the universe itself accepts hierarchy. Still, disagreement remains. Scholars continue debating whether these council scenes preserve memories of actual assemblies in early cities or reflect later royal courts projected into myth. Some see echoes of collective governance, others emphasize literary convention and theology. Neither view fully excludes the other. Human beings imagine heaven using available forms. Then they reshape earthly institutions according to heavenly models. The two mirrors face each other until origin becomes difficult to identify. A messenger enters carrying a sealed tablet. He kneels before the assembly and waits for permission to speak. The seal bears the mark of a distant city whose ruler requests divine support. The request is simple. The consequences are not. If the council approves one king, another may fall. If one city receives rain, another may suffer. Favor is never neutral when resources are limited. The gods govern competing claims. You sense that this is the deeper burden of the council. Creation is not a finished act. It is an arrangement requiring constant maintenance. Rivers shift, walls crumble, kings rebel, humans pray for opposite outcomes. One army asks for victory while another asks for protection. One farmer begs for rain while another fears the flood. Divine order must somehow contain incompatible desires. The chamber becomes less like a throne room and more like a machine. Each deity performs a function. Each function connects to another. Wisdom restrains force, judgment answers disorder. Fertility repairs destruction, death limits growth. The system depends upon balance among powers. This is why a single uncontrolled god would be dangerous. Enlil commands storms and destinies, but unrestricted command could break the structure that gives his authority meaning. The council does not merely support him, it also contains him. You notice the significance of witnesses. When Enlil speaks, others hear. When a decree is issued, scribes record it. When punishment is proposed, objections enter the memory of the assembly. Absolute power prefers isolation. Council power creates accountability. Perhaps that is why fear moves so quietly through the room. No god wishes to oppose Enlil. Yet no god can safely ignore the higher structure binding them all. A fringe interpretation imagines the council as a memory of advanced rulers dividing control over territories and human populations. No accepted archaeological finding proves such a scenario. The idea persists because the myths describe authority in organized, almost administrative terms. The language also. Swactica. Domains are assigned, boundaries are recognized, tasks are delegated. Still, divine administration need not imply hidden technology. Ancient societies understood bureaucracy, hierarchy, and political rivalry perfectly well. They required no visitors from the stars to imagine a difficult governing body. The council grows silent. A decision approaches, but no final word has yet been given. Enlil's proposal hangs in the air like pressure before a storm. Then every face turns toward the highest place. The seat remains distant from the table, raised by several steps and framed by dark curtains. Its occupant may speak rarely, but the room has been designed around that possibility. Enlil waits. The god of wisdom waits. The scribes hold their tools above wet clay. Nothing moves except lamp smoke curling toward the ceiling. In that stillness, the true nature of the council becomes clear. It is not a gathering where all voices carry equal weight. It is a hierarchy where power must be recognized, witnessed, and approved. Even the loudest command pauses before judgment. Your feet sink slightly into damp earth where an older settlement lies buried beneath later walls. The sun has not yet risen, but the horizon carries a thin band of grey. Reed beds stir beside a sluggish channel. The air smells of mud, ash, fish, and the faint sweetness of crushed herbs. No city towers above you. There are only low houses, narrow paths, storage pits, and cooking fires breathing softly into the morning. Dogs move between doorways. A child turns in sleep behind a woven screen. Somewhere nearby, grain is being ground against stone. This world exists long before the grand temples dominate the plain. Its people leave fewer written voices because writing has not yet become part of ordinary administration. Their beliefs survive through burials, figurines, painted vessels, seals, and the repeated shapes built into sacred spaces. Archaeologists often reach such worlds by digging downward through later cities. Every layer records rebuilding, abandonment, flood deposits, fire, and human return. A temple may stand upon the flattened remains of an earlier sanctuary. Beneath that sanctuary rests another floor, then another, each carrying older offerings and forgotten repairs. The deeper the trench, the stranger continuity becomes. You watch workers clear a compacted surface with small tools. A line of plaster appears beneath the soil. Beside it lies a clay figurine with exaggerated eyes and folded hands. Its face is simple. Its meaning is not. Such objects have been interpreted as worshippers, protective figures, household spirits, fertility symbols, or ritual substitutes. The correct answer may differ according to place and period. Records from the major excavations confirm that sacred buildings in Mesopotamia often occupied the same locations for centuries. Communities rebuilt them repeatedly, preserving the importance of a place even when architectural styles changed. This persistence suggests memory without complete explanation. A later priest may know that a location is holy while forgetting the first reason. A ritual may continue after its oldest story disappears. People inherit gestures before they inherit meanings. You can feel this inheritance in the settlement. A woman places a small bowl near a doorway before beginning her work. No inscription explains the act. No hymn survives to tell you whom she addresses. Perhaps the offering honors an ancestor. Perhaps it protects the household. Perhaps it belongs to a power whose name will never be written. The uncertainty is gentle but unsettling. Modern histories often begin with named kings and recorded wars because written evidence makes them easier to describe. Yet human belief is older than writing, and divine systems rarely appear fully formed at the moment scribes begin recording them. The great gods have histories. Their titles may preserve earlier powers absorbed into new identities. Their symbols may come from communities whose languages vanished. Their family relationships may have been reorganized by later theologians seeking order among competing traditions. Religion grows like a city. One wall covers another. One sanctuary rises above buried foundations. One god inherits the attributes of another, then becomes ancient in the memories of people who never knew the change occurred. You walk toward a low platform at the settlement center. The structure is built from mud brick, renewed with fresh plaster, and approached by a narrow passage. Inside, small vessels stand against the wall. Burned grain and animal bones remain near a hearth. The room may be sacred, it may also be domestic. In early communities, the separation between temple, household, workshop, and ritual space is not always clear. Scholars continue debating when organized temple institutions fully emerged and how early religious authority became linked with economic control. The evidence allows several possibilities. Sacred leadership may have grown gradually from household ritual. Communal ceremonies may have gathered around seasonal work. Specialist priests may have appeared only after settlements became large enough to support them. No single path explains every site. You hear flint tapping against stone. A craftsman shapes a blade while watching smoke drift from the central platform. His work appears ordinary, but even ordinary tools may carry ritual meaning. A blade cuts reeds, prepares food, trims hides, and opens the bodies of sacrificial animals. Objects move between practical and sacred use. The people around you do not divide their world into neat modern categories. Soil, water, ancestors, animals, weather, and unseen forces belong to one living environment. A canal is engineering. It is also survival. It may also be sacred. This blending matters because the earliest divine ideas may have grown from relationships with dangerous landscapes. Southern Mesopotamia offers fertile soil, but only through careful water management. Rivers bring life, yet they also change course and destroy settlements. The environment rewards cooperation. It also punishes error. Communities therefore depend upon shared labor, seasonal knowledge, and confidence that unseen powers can be approached through proper acts. A quirky detail from early settlement life appears in the small clay tokens used before full writing developed. These shapes may have represented grain, animals, or quantities, allowing people to track goods without written words. A tiny cone could stand for a measure of barley. A small sphere might represent something else entirely. The ancestors of accounting begin as pocket-sized clay objects, which is a wonderfully humble origin for bureaucracy. Yet these tokens reveal something profound. Humans learn to turn reality into symbols. Grain becomes a shape, labor becomes a count, obligation becomes a remembered mark. Divine power may undergo a similar transformation. A river becomes a bing, a storm becomes intention, a sacred place becomes a house, a feared force becomes a name. Then names gather into families, ranks, and councils. You kneel beside a painted vessel recently lifted from the earth. Its surface shows repeated animals and flowing lines. Some figures appear natural, while others bend into patterns that resist easy explanation. The scene may depict movement, ritual, water, hunting, or a myth whose words are gone. The vessel speaks visually, you listen without understanding. Researchers at major universities have studied how symbols spread across early Mesopotamian communities, yet interpretation remains cautious. Similar images do not always prove shared beliefs, though repeated forms can suggest communication, exchange, and overlapping ritual tradition. The question remains open. Did later Sumerian gods descend directly from these prehistoric powers, or did new political systems reshape older sacred landscapes beyond recognition? Perhaps both occurred. Some names may have changed while basic fears endured. People continued needing rain, protection, fertility, healing, and order. They continued facing death, disease, flood, hunger, and the uncertainty of childbirth. The divine world adapted to permanent human concerns. Your hand touches the rough edge of the low platform. The brick crumbles slightly beneath your fingers, returning to the earth from which it was made. Nothing here, announces Enlil. Identifies Anu. No list names the Anunnaki. Still, the structure contains the beginnings of hierarchy. A central place receives special treatment. Certain offerings are separated from ordinary food. Some people enter, while others remain outside. Sacred difference has begun. A fringe possibility suggests that later myths preserve memories of rulers or beings from a civilization predating the known cities. Archaeology has not established evidence for such an advanced hidden society beneath the earlier settlements. The idea survives because the oldest layers feel incomplete. They contain symbols without explanations, sacred spaces without texts, and traditions whose descendants later describe a world governed by powers from a forgotten age. Human imagination enters these gaps easily, yet the quieter possibility may be more haunting. No lost empire is required. Generations of ordinary people can create immense systems of belief while forgetting their first steps. A simple offering becomes custom. Custom becomes law. Law becomes divine command. Eventually, a council of gods stands above humanity. Beneath that council rest thousands of unnamed hands, rebuilding sacred walls and repeating gestures whose origins have vanished. You read as dawn reaches the settlement, smoke turned gold in the new light. Birds lift from the reeds. Someone opens a door and pours water onto the ground. The act lasts only a moment. Its meaning may already be ancient. You stand beneath a night sky so clear that the stars seem carved into black stone. The plain around you lies silent, except for reeds brushing softly beside a canal. Warm earth releases the day's heat through your sandals, far away. A temple lamp flickers above the city wall. Your eyes rise, above the roofs, above the clouds, and above the wandering lights of the planets. Ancient imagination places the highest heaven. 'Tis distant, motionless, and almost impossible to approach. There dwells Anu, traduced by thunder, and does not rush across the sky with weapons raised. His authority appears through distance, ancestry, and the quiet certainty that other powers receive their rank beneath him. Ancient records identify Anu as a great god of heaven and a father within the divine order. His name is linked with the uppermost realm, where earthly noise becomes faint and human concerns appear very small. Enlil governs wind, command, and the ordering of the inhabited world. Anu stands above that movement. The difference is subtle, but important. Wind crosses the earth, heaven contains the wind. A storm may terrify a city, yet it still unfolds beneath the sky. Enlil's strength can shake doors, flatten crops, and bend trees, but Anu represents the space within which such power exists. Your mind drifts toward a divine court suspended beyond the stars. The floor shines like dark water, columns vanish into shadow, no dust gathers there, and no insect disturbs the silence. At the far end stands a high seat. Anu sits without movement. His face reveals little, He does not need to display anger because everyone present understands what his judgment could remove. Divine offices, sacred privileges, and royal destinies depend upon recognition from the highest level. Enlil enters with confidence, but not carelessness. He possesses command among the gods, yet rank shapes every gesture. His voice remains powerful, though its final force depends upon a structure that reaches higher. A mainstream historical fact appears throughout Mesopotamian tradition. Anu often occupies the senior position within divine genealogy. Even when other gods become more active in worship and narrative, this creates an unusual form of supremacy. The highest god is not always the busiest god. He may receive fewer dramatic scenes, yet his authority remains embedded within titles, family lines, and formal approval. A distant ruler can dominate an institution without appearing daily before it. Human courts understand this perfectly. A governor may issue orders across a province, while a king remains unseen in a remote capital. The governor appears more active, but his office depends upon recognition from the throne. Anu's power works in a similar way. You hear the faint clink of metal from the imagined hall. A divine messenger lowers a staff before speaking. His words concern a dispute between cities, each claiming sacred favor. One ruler has built new walls, another has violated an oath. Enlil proposes judgment. The assembly listens. Anu does not interrupt. His silence allows the argument to unfold, but everyone measures each word against his possible response. The council behaves differently because he is present. This is power without display. It's possible that ancient theologians used Anu to preserve the idea of ultimate legitimacy while allowing more accessible gods to govern daily concerns. People needed deities who brought rain, healed sickness, protected childbirth, and guided kings. A remote sky father could remain supreme without handling every prayer. Scholars continue debating how strongly Anu was worshipped across different periods and cities. His importance in theological lists does not always match the intensity of his popular cult. This gap between formal rank and daily devotion remains significant. A god can stand at the summit of doctrine while receiving less attention from ordinary households. Human beings often approach the power most likely to answer immediate needs. The highest authority may feel too distant. You move through the streets of ancient Uruk, where Anu held deep associations with sacred tradition. Temple precincts rise above crowded houses, and processional ways cut through the city like carefully controlled rivers. Bakers pull flat loaves from clay oven. Merchants argue over measures of wool. A priest carries a vessel toward a restricted doorway. The city continues its practical life beneath a heaven that remains invisible in daylight. A quirky detail from temple administration is that divine households could possess furniture, garments, jewelry, and ceremonial objects listed with remarkable care. Even gods required inventories, or at least their priests did. Somewhere in a storeroom, an official counts sacred stools. The thought is almost comforting. Yet Anu's possessions would never fully explain his authority. His power rests less in objects than in position. He is the origin point from which rank descends. Imagine a chain lowered from the stars. At the top stands heavenly sovereignty. Beneath it hang divine offices, temple institutions, royal authority, civic order, and household obligation. Every link depends upon the one above. Enlil occupies an immense place within this chain, but he is not its beginning. His command can shape the world because the system recognizes him. Recognition can also be withdrawn. That possibility creates fear. A warrior may fear defeat. A ruler fears removal. A god whose identity rests upon office may fear something even deeper, the loss of divine legitimacy. Anu does not need to overpower Enlil in battle. I may only need to refuse approval. You feel the coldness of that idea in the night air. The greatest punishment is not always destruction. It can be exclusion from the order that gives existence meaning. A divine title is more than praise. It defines function, status, and place within the cosmos. To lose such standing would be to become uncertain, diminished, perhaps even forgotten. Enlil commands because others acknowledge his command. Anu represents the source of that acknowledgement. Some later stories allow younger gods to rise in importance, sometimes absorbing roles once associated with older powers. This reflects changing cities, empires, and priestly traditions. Heavenly hierarchy evolves with human history, yet Anu rarely disappears completely. He remains like the upper edge of the world, difficult to see clearly but necessary for the structure beneath it. Even when another god becomes politically dominant, Anu's seniority can provide ancestral approval. This suggests a system that adapts without abandoning its oldest summit. A fringe interpretation claims that Anu was remembered as a leader from another world who governed subordinate beings on Earth. Archaeology has not produced accepted evidence supporting that claim. Still, the interpretation draws strength from the language of descent, assembly, delegated rule, and heavenly residence. Ancient myth often describes the divine through spatial images. High means powerful, distant means pure, descent means intervention, return means withdrawal. These patterns do not require hidden machines. They emerge naturally when human beings look upward and imagine authority beyond reach. You return your gaze to the stars. The Milky Way stretches above the plain like pale smoke. To an ancient observer, the sky is not empty space. It is a layered realm filled with signs, movements, and divine order. The stars keep their courses. The moon follows measured phases. Planet wander, yet not without pattern. Such order may have suggested a ruler unlike the storm. Storms are violent and temporary. The sky remains. Anu's authority therefore feels older than emotion. It resembles law written into the architecture of reality. Enlil can become angry. Anu simply is. The open scholarly question concerns whether this remote supremacy reflects an early form of kingship, a theological abstraction, or the merging of several older sky traditions. No surviving tablet resolves the matter completely. Perhaps Anu began as the personified height of heaven. Perhaps priests later transformed that height into senior kingship. Perhaps political change strengthened his role as divine ancestor. The possibilities. Overlap. You hear distant footsteps along the city wall. A guard passes beneath the stars, carrying a spear and fighting sleep. He glances upward for omens, then continues into darkness. Above him, Anu remains unseen. Below him, rulers claim authority. Between those levels stands Enlil, powerful enough to terrify the earth, yet still beneath a heaven he cannot command. The highest seat does not tremble. It waits in perfect silence. The city sleeps beneath a pale moon, while the upper terraces remain open to the cold night air. You climb a narrow stairway where each step has been polished by generations of sandaled feet. The wall beside you feels rough and dry. A faint scent of cedar smoke drifts downward from the sanctuary above. At the summit, the sky seems nearer. Priests stand beneath the stars with bowls, lamps, and carefully prepared offerings. Their movements are slow because ritual leaves little room for haste. Every gesture must appear worthy of the distant power they hope to address. Anu is not expected to arrive like an ordinary visitor. No doorway is open for him. No servant announces his name. His presence belongs to the highest realm, beyond the visible roof of the world. The sanctuary does not imprison him within architecture. It marks a point where human attention turns upward. This distance shapes his authority. A god who frequently descends must enter stories, disputes, and local loyalties. He becomes familiar. People describe his moods, imagine his appearance, and assign him responsibilities. Familiarity creates devotion. It can also create limitation. Anu avoids much of this limitation by remaining remote. He is associated with heaven itself, a domain too vast to be contained by one city, statue, or daily request. Records confirm that active divine intervention in Mesopotamian literature often falls to gods closer to human affairs. Healing gods answer illness, storm gods govern weather, protective figures guard homes, gates, and vulnerable children. Anu stands farther away. His role concerns legitimacy, ancestry, and the highest level of judgment. Such functions do not require constant descent. Indeed, frequent appearance might weaken the impression that he belongs beyond ordinary reach. You enter the sanctuary. A ceremonial seat waits near the rear wall, covered with fine cloth and surrounded by vessels of polished metal. Bread, dates, beer, and fragrant oils have been arranged nearby. Nothing moves. The absence feels intentional. The priests do not stare nervously toward the seat. They understand that divine presence may not resemble human arrival. The god can be honored without becoming visible. This belief creates a strange form of closeness. Anu is everywhere above, yet nowhere within reach. You hear a quiet chant rise from the shadows. The words praise the height of heaven, the stability of divine order, and the seniority of the celestial Father. The voices remain measured. No one demands that Anu descend. A command addressed to the highest god would be both foolish and rather ambitious for a person carrying a clay lamp. Instead, the ritual invites attention. Human beings ask to be noticed, not visited. This distinction reveals something important about ancient prayer. Worship does not always seek a dramatic answer. Sometimes it preserves a relationship with a power whose sarnats is accepted as part of its nature. A ruler may receive petitions without appearing before every petitioner. A judge may shape behavior without entering every street. Anu's absence works in the same manner. You descend into the city as dawn begins to soften the eastern horizon. Workers open storerooms, bakers prepare ovens, a shepherd drives animals toward the outer gate. Daily life belongs to more accessible powers. A woman touches a protective amulet before lifting her child. A merchant whispers a prayer before checking weights. A farmer watches clouds and hopes the wind will remain gentle. These needs are immediate. Anu's authority is not and belongs to the framework that makes other divine roles possible. His concern is not every jar, fever, or argument. His concern is the order beneath which such events receive meaning. Scholars continue debating whether divine remoteness signals declining popular worship or a deliberate theological elevation. A god may become distant because fewer people address him directly. He may also become distant because theologians place him above ordinary ritual. The surviving evidence supports both possibilities in different periods. Religious importance cannot be measured only by the number of surviving prayers. A senior god may appear less often precisely because his rank is assumed rather than repeatedly explained. You pause beside a canal where moonlight still lingers on the water. A fisherman pulls a small boat through reeds, careful not to disturb the bank. He carries a simple offering tied within cloth, intended for a local shrine near the river. He will not climb toward the highest heaven, and he has fish to catch. This ordinary practicality shaped ancient religion. People approach divine powers according to need, place, and inherited custom. A remote god could remain supreme while more familiar deities receive daily attention. One quirky detail appears in rituals designed to manage divine absence. Statues could be washed, clothed, fed, transported, and ceremoniously awakened, allowing priests to maintain a god's earthly household even when the deity remained unseen. The statue became a focus, not a cage. Anu's remote nature made this tension especially clear. His image might receive honor, yet heaven remained his true domain. The earthly representation pointed beyond itself. You imagine the divine assembly facing a crisis. A rebellion has spread among younger gods. Sacred duties are neglected. Human rulers interpret the confusion as permission to ignore old boundaries. Enlil demands intervention. His voice fills the chamber with urgency. He expects a decree, a visible act, perhaps even the descent of the highest authority. Anu remains still. This stillness can be understood as hesitation. wisdom, or judgment already formed, the council cannot tell which possibility is most dangerous. A quick answer may calm fear. Enlil is accustomed to action. He governs through command and division and decision. Anu's refusal to descend forces him to operate without complete certainty. That uncertainty becomes restraint. The highest god does not need to appear because the possibility of appearance is enough. Every subordinate power must consider what might finally compel him to act. This resembles a sealed door at the end of a royal corridor. No one knows what happens behind it, yet everyone walks more carefully nearby. A fringe theory proposes that Anu's rare descent preserves memories of a ruler who governed from a distant location, communicating through appointed representatives. No accepted archaeological evidence confirms such a literal scenario. The idea remains attractive because delegated authority is prominent in the myths. Commands travel through messengers. Offices are distributed. Decisions pass from higher ranks toward lower ones. Yet ordinary political experience explains these patterns well. Ancient people knew that distant rulers could control provinces through governors, letters, tribute, and fear. They required no hidden machinery to imagine heaven as an imperial court. Still, Anu's absence carries more than political meaning. It transforms him into a boundary. He represents the point beyond which explanation becomes difficult. Other gods possess stories, conflicts, marriages, journeys, and recognizable emotions. Anu often feels closer to a principle. High is height, high is seniority, high is the authority that does not need to enter the room. It is possible that his remoteness protected him from narrative embarrassment. Active gods make mistakes, lose contests, become deceived, or regret their choices. A distant god avoids such vulnerability. He cannot be easily defeated because he rarely competes. He cannot be exposed as weak because his strength remains largely untested. This may sound convenient, and perhaps it is. Theology has always understood the value of keeping ultimate power beyond ordinary inspection. Your attention returns to the upper terrace. The sun rises behind the city, turning temple walls the color of warm clay. Priests extinguish the night lamps one by one. No divine figure has appeared, no voice has crossed the sky, yet the ritual is considered complete. The people below will continue working beneath a system shaped by that absence. Kings will claim heavenly approval. Enlil will issue commands. Councils will debate consequences. Above them, Anu remains distant. Perhaps he rarely descends because he fears contamination by the lower world. Perhaps his office demands separation. Perhaps absence is simply the clearest expression of power. The answer remains uncertain. The empty sanctuary offers no explanation. It only preserves the uncomfortable thought that the highest authority may be most effective when no one can reach it. Cold light spreads across a chamber where a single clay tablet rests inside a wooden case. You approach slowly, hearing the faint squeak of sandals across the polished floor. The air carries the scent of wax smoke, cedar oil, and old dust. Near the rear wall, a priest stands beside a sealed vessel. The object before you is small. Its meaning is enormous. Across its surface, carefully pressed, signs describe authority descending from heaven. The language does not present kingship as a human agreement created around a fire. It arrives from above, already formed, carrying rules, duties, and expectations. Kingship is not invented, it is granted. This idea appears repeatedly in ancient Mesopotamian tradition. Cities do not merely produce rulers through ambition or inheritance. A divine decision places authority into human hands, and that decision can later be reversed. The throne therefore belongs to heaven first. A king occupies it only temporarily. You imagine the moment of transfer. The divine council gathers beneath a ceiling painted with stars. A ceremonial staff lies upon a low table. Beside it rests a circlet of metal, simple in shape but heavy with meaning. Enlil stands among the great gods. His voice names the chosen city. A divine scribe records the decree. The ruler waiting below does not hear every word, yet priests soon announce that heaven has selected him. His victories become proof. His survival becomes confirmation. His palace now appears as the earthly extension of celestial order, till the gift contains a warning. What descends can also be withdrawn. Ancient king lists preserve the striking image of kingship moving from one city to another. A city flourishes, then falls, another rises and receives sacred authority. Political change becomes part of a divine sequence rather than random human struggle. Records confirm that rulers used this language to explain conquest and succession. A victorious dynasty claimed that the gods had rejected the former city and transferred favor elsewhere. Defeat became judgment. Victory became permission. This interpretation made history appear orderly. Even when the ground was covered with ruined walls and frightened refugees, you place your hand near the tablet, though you do not touch it. The signs describe more than a crown. They suggest an office existing independently from any individual ruler. A king may die, but kingship remains. The institution survives the person. This distinction also applies to divine authority. Enlil holds a role within the cosmic system. His power is immense, yet it may still depend upon offices, privileges, and decrees recognized by a higher order. Authority is therefore layered. Anu represents senior sovereignty. Enlil exercises command. Human kings govern cities. Each level receives power from somewhere above. The structure resembles a staircase cut into stone. Every step supports the one beneath it, but none of the lower steps can claim to be the summit. You hear a bronze seal roll across wet clay. Its carved design leaves behind a miniature scene of introduction. A worshipper stands before a seated god, guided by a lesser divine figure. The image expresses access through rank. No one approaches the highest power directly. Gatekeepers matter. Messengers matter. Sponsors matter. A human ruler may require a patron deity to enter the wider divine order. A lesser god may seek support from a greater one. Even divine communication follows protocol. One quirky detail from ancient administration is that seals functioned like signatures, badges, and security devices at once. They closed jars, marked tablets, and identified officials through tiny carved scenes. Losing one could cause serious trouble. The ancient equivalent of forgetting a password was considerably heavier and often made from stone. The seal beside you depicts a seated figure holding symbols of authority. The image does not explain whether the power shown is permanent or conditional. The texts provide the answer. Sacred favor can end. Kings often describe themselves as chosen, beloved, or appointed, yet royal inscriptions also reveal anxiety. They rebuild temples, restore offerings, consult omens, and praise the gods at great length. A secure ruler would not need so much reassurance. The constant ritual labor suggests that legitimacy must be maintained. Divine approval is not a possession stored safely in the palace. It is a relationship requiring attention. A neglected temple can signal rebellion. An improper oath can weaken a reign. A bad omen can turn confidence into fear. You enter a second room where specialists examine the night sky. They record the movements of stars, planets, and the moon with patient care. Their observations support calendars, festivals, and royal decisions. A strange appearance in the heavens may warn that kingship is threatened. An eclipse can become especially dangerous when interpreted as a sign aimed toward the ruler. Protective rituals may then be performed. In some periods, a substitute king could temporarily occupy the royal position while danger passed. The true ruler withdrew from view, allowing another person to receive the omen's threat. The practice sounds theatrical. It was also deadly serious. Such rituals reveal that kingship could be treated almost like a garment. It could be placed upon another body, protected through ceremony, then restored to its original wearer. The office carried danger apart from the man. This idea casts divine rank in a new light. If office can be transferred among humans, could divine authority also change hands? Mesopotamian traditions sometimes show one god rising in prominence while another becomes less central. Seas grow powerful, and their picturing gods rise with them. Political transformation reshapes theology. The question remains open among scholars. Did divine succession myths reflect actual shifts between priestly centers, or did political rulers adapt older theology to justify new empires? The evidence suggests both processes could occur. A new capital might elevate its god without erasing older deities. Priests could preserve ancient ranks while quietly rearranging practical power. Heaven becomes flexible, yet flexibility creates instability. Enlil's command may appear eternal, but the historical world surrounding his worship changes constantly. Dynasties collapse, cities burn, languages yield to new languages. Foreign kings adopt local titles and claim the same divine approval as those they conquered. The sacred system survives by permitting transfer. That survival also proves that no earthly ruler owns authority completely. You imagine Enlil holding the tablet of kingship. Its clay surface is cool against his palm. Names of cities appear in lines, each followed by years, rulers, and endings. He can grant dominion. I can also erase it, yet the tablet itself seems older than his hand. Its rules may not originate with him. A fringe interpretation describes such tablets as records of advanced knowledge controlled by a ruling class from beyond the human world. No accepted archaeological evidence supports that literal conclusion. Still, the imagery of stored authority remains compelling. Ancient people understood that written documents could transform reality. A contract changed ownership. A decree assigned labor. A seal closed a decision. It was natural to imagine cosmic power recorded in the same way. The gods possessed ideal versions of human tools. Their tablets contained destinies. Their seals confirmed creation. Their decrees moved kingship between cities. Writing became sacred because it could preserve authority beyond the speaker's life. You return to the first tablet as evening darkens the room. The priest beside this case begins covering the object with cloth. His hands move carefully, almost tenderly. Understands that the tablet is not merely clay. It holds a dangerous principle. No ruler is final. No city is permanent. No command remains secure if the source of legitimacy turns away. Even Enlil's authority must exist within that logic. He may possess the power to grant kingship, but the right to grant it may itself be granted. He may speak the decree, yet another level of order determines why his speech is binding. The tablet disappears beneath the cloth. The chamber grows dim. Somewhere outside, a king sits upon a throne and imagines his power complete. Above him, the gods hold the record. The chamber feels colder now, though no wind enters through the sealed doors. You stand near a wall of dark brick while the divine assembly gathers beneath rows of oil lamps. Their flames remain steady, but the shadows around Enlil seem to move with a life of their own. He stands at the center. His posture is controlled. His face reveals nothing, yet his hands rest too firmly upon the carved staff before him, as though the wood alone keeps some private unease from becoming visible. A judgment is coming, not for humanity, not for a rebellious king. This judgment concerns the one who usually delivers judgment to others. Enlil has long carried the voice of command. Cities fear his anger. Kings praise his favor. Priests repeat his titles with careful precision. Now he must answer. The idea appears strange because power often hides the conditions placed upon it. Subjects see decrees, punishments, ceremonies, and symbols. They rarely witness the private moment when a ruler must explain himself before a greater authority. Yet ancient myths sometimes preserve such reversals. A god acts with confidence, then discovers that other powers object. A punishment exceeds its purpose. A command disturbs the balance it was meant to protect. The council does not forget. You hear clay tablets shifting upon a low table. A divine scribe prepares the record, pressing one line beneath another. Every word spoken here may become permanent. That permanence changes the room. Enlil cannot dismiss the gathering as rumor or insult. Witnesses surround him. The highest seat remains occupied by a silent presence whose authority does not need defending. Records confirm that Mesopotamian myths often portrayed divine decisions as collective matters, especially when creation, destruction, or kingship is involved. Even a dominant god may face disagreement when his actions threaten wider order. The important question is not whether Enlil feels ordinary fear. Gods in ancient literature do not always experience emotion as humans do. Their fear may represent loss of stisa, conflict among powers, or anxiety within the cosmic system. Still, the language of trembling, withdrawal, caution, and appeal appears often enough to suggest vulnerability. Divine power has edges. You notice the others avoiding Enlil's gaze. Some may support him. Others may simply fear becoming associated with his judgment. Loyalty becomes delicate when the highest authority begins asking questions. A lesser god shifts position near the doorway. Another studies the floor. Only the god of wisdom watches openly, his expression calm but unreadable. Enlil speaks first. His voice remains deep, yet its force no longer fills the chamber completely. He explains that his decision protected order. Humanity had grown unruly, noise had increased, boundaries had weakened. He acted, he says, because action was required. No one interrupts. He continues by describing balance, necessity, and duty. These are the words rulers prefer when consequences become difficult to defend. The argument is carefully built. Disorder threatened creation. Correction restored stability. Any suffering followed from a greater need. The logic is polished. It is also familiar. Human councils have heard similar defenses for thousands of years. Harsh decisions are often presented as unavoidable, especially by those who made them. A slight movement passes through the assembly. Perhaps the explanation satisfies some listeners. Perhaps others have heard it too many times. The highest seat remains silent. That sound unsettles Enlil more than accusation would. An accusation can be answered. Silence offers no shape to resist. You hear the soft crackle of lamp oil. The sound seems unnaturally loud. A faint scent of incense gathers beneath the ceiling, sweet at first, then bitter. The divine scribe waits. Enlil begins again. Her name's ancient law. I invokes precedent. He recalls earlier judgments accepted by the council. This strategy reveals something important. Even the strongest god seeks protection within established rules. He does not claim that power alone makes his action right, and claims that order authorizes it. That distinction suggests accountability. The gods are not free to behave without consequence. Their powers exist within relationships, duties, and limits. A storm god may unleash destruction, but another authority decides whether the destruction was lawful. Scholars continue debating how literally such divine conflicts should be read. Some interpret them as reflections of rivalry among priesthoods and cities. Others see theological efforts to explain suffering while preserving belief in cosmic order. Both readings reveal tension. If one god causes disaster, another may become the voice of restraint. Myth distributes responsibility across the pantheon, allowing ancient listeners to question divine cruelty without rejecting the sacred system entirely. The council becomes a place where moral discomfort can speak. You sense that discomfort now. A deity associated with birth asks whether destruction can truly preserve creation. A judge questions whether punishment without proportion becomes another form of disorder. No one raises a voice. The calmness makes every objection sharper. Enlil listens. He does not strike them and does not leave. That restraint may be the clearest sign of fear. A ruler who feels secure can ignore criticism. A ruler awaiting judgment must endure it. One quirky detail from ancient legal life is that formal disputes could involve elaborate witness lists, oath-taking, sealed testimony, and careful descriptions of property boundaries. Even gods, in mythic imagination, seem unable to escape paperwork. The divine tribe records every objection. Enlil glances toward the bullet, perhaps as he understands what writing does better than anyone. Spoken anger fades. A written judgment survives dynasties. It may be copied, it may be recited, it may reach temples where his name is praised. The fear is not merely punishment, it is memory. A Siverac can be excused during crisis, but recorded memory allows later generations to ask whether the crisis justified it. Reputation becomes vulnerable once authority can be examined. Enlil's titles depend upon being remembered as guardian of order. What happens if the record portrays him as its greatest threat? The question enters the chamber without being spoken. A fringe interpretation imagines this scene as a disciplinary hearing among powerful non-human rulers, each bound by laws established beyond Earth. Archaeology offers accepted evidence for such literal events. Yet the image persists because the myths describe rank, procedure, objection, and judgment with unusual clarity. Still, earthly experience provides a sufficient explanation. Ancient people lived under kings, governors, councils, judges, and temple officials. They knew that authority could be both sacred and dangerous. They understood that rulers feared rebellion, disgrace, and removal. They carried that understanding into heaven. The higher seat finally responds. No thunder follows, no weapon appears. A few measured words cross the chamber, calm enough to feel almost merciful. Enlil's decision is examined, not dismissed. His intention is acknowledged, but intention does not erase consequence. Authority must preserve the system that grants it power. A command that destroys its own purpose becomes unlawful. Enlil lowers his head. The movement is slight. It changes everything. You do not witness humiliation. The scene remains formal, controlled, and dignified. Yet the Lord who bends kings now accepts correction. Perhaps this is what he fears most. Not pain, not defeat. Recognition that his judgment has limits. The highest authority does not need to remove him. A warning may be enough. The possibility of removal will follow him into every future decision. From this moment, command carries memory. Whenever Enlil considers punishment, he must remember the silent seat, the waiting scribe, and the questions spoken without trembling. That memory becomes an invisible restraint. Restrained. The council slowly disperses. Divine figures pass through the doorway in quiet groups. No one discusses the judgment openly. Courts, whether human or divine, often prefer silence after dangerous meetings. Enlil remains beside the table. The clay tablet lies before him, still damp enough to receive another mark, and does not touch it. Outside, the night sky stretches over cities filled with sleeping families. They know nothing of the hearing above them. They only know that the storm has not yet come. A bronze gate rises before you beneath a sky without clouds. Its surface is covered with stars, rosettes, lions, and narrow bands of sacred signs. Two immense doors meet at the center, sealed by a bar thick enough to resemble a fallen tree. No mortal hand could lift it. The air near the threshold feels colder than the open night. You smell metal, cedar, resin, and the faint mineral scent of stone washed by rain. Somewhere beyond the gate, voices murmur within a hidden court. You cannot hear the words. That is intentional. Access to divine authority depends upon distance, rank, and permission. The highest places are not entered through courage alone. They are approached through guardians who say who may pass, who must wait, and who should never come closer. Two figures stand beside the gate. Their bodies are human in shape, but their horned crowns reveal divine status. Each holds a staff carved with curling forms. Their faces remain calm, though neither expression offers welcome. They are not soldiers in the ordinary sense. They are keepers of boundaries. Ancient Mesopotamian religion gave serious attention to thresholds. Doorways marked transitions between public and restricted space, safety and danger, purity and contamination. Homes, palaces, temples, and city gates could all receive protective rituals. Records confirm that protective figures were buried beneath floors or placed near entrances to repel harmful forces. Small clay images of guardians might remain unseen, sealed within foundations while silently defending the building above. Their hidden position increased their power. A visible guard watches people, an invisible guardian watches everything else. You take one step toward the gate. The figure on the left raises his staff. The movement is slow, almost polite. Still, your body stops immediately. Divine protocol has no need for shouting. A messenger approaches along the stone path behind you. His robe is dusted from travel. A sealed tablet hangs inside a leather pouch against his chest. He bows before the guardians and identifies the authority who sent him. The first gatekeeper listens. The second examines the seal. Neither asks whether the message is urgent. Urgency does not cancel rank. A crisis may disturb cities below, yet the highest court continues according to established order. The messenger waits. His sandals remain planted upon a line cut across the stone. He does not cross it without permission. This small detail reveals the structure of heaven. Divine power is not merely concentrated at the center. It is distributed through layers of controlled access. Gatekeepers, heralds, scribes, attendants, and counselors shape what the highest authority sees and hears. A ruler may appear all-knowing. In practice, information reaches him through others. The messenger's tablet concerns unrest among several cities. Enlil has issued commands, but resistance has spread. Local gods petition for judgment, each presenting a different account. The guardians exchange a glance. Even Enlil's business does not open the gate automatically. The messenger must wait while his name, purpose, and seal are carried inward. Another attendant will inspect the request. A divine herald may then decide whether the matter deserves immediate attention. Authority is protected by procedure. One quirky detail from palace life is that ancient officials sometimes used long chains of intermediaries to reach a ruler. A request could pass through several hands before entering the royal presence, gathering seals, endorsements, and nervous corrections along the way. The gods appear to inherit the same administrative patience. No one enters the highest chamber simply because he feels important. This would have disappointed many kings. The gate opens a narrow distance. Warm lamplight spills across the dark stone. You glimpse a corridor lined with carved panels, each showing figures carrying tribute, vessels, weapons, and ceremonial objects. The messenger is allowed inside. You are not. The doors close again with a low sound that seems to travel beneath your feet. You study the guardians more carefully. Their purpose extends beyond keeping intruders away. They also protect the inner court from disorder, impurity, and uncontrolled speech. A gate filters not only bodies, but intentions. Who may approach? Who may speak? Whose fear deserves attention? Whose complaint threatens the cosmic order? These questions give gatekeepers unusual influence. A ruler hidden behind many doors depends upon those who control the passage. They can delay a warning, elevate a petition, or prevent an unwelcome voice from being heard. Scholars continue debating how directly divine gatekeepers reflect human palace officials. Some interpret them as symbolic guardians of sacred boundaries. Others see clear echoes of royal bureaucracy and temple administration. Both roles may exist together. Ancient imagination often joined practical experience with cosmic meaning. A palace guard could inspire a heavenly guardian, while sacred beliefs gave earthly gates greater importance. You hear footsteps beyond the bronze doors. A second messenger emerges, pale and silent. He carries no tablet now. Whatever message he delivered has been accepted, rejected, or transformed into a decision he cannot discuss. The guardian returns his seers. The messenger bows and departs. No explanation follows. This secrecy matters. The highest court maintains authority partly by controlling information. Those outside know that decisions are made, yet they do not witness every argument. Mystery protects dignity. Open debate reveals uncertainty. Closed doors create inevitability. Enlil understands this system well. His own authority depends upon messengers, priests, omens, and officials who carry his will toward the human world. Yet when he seeks the highest approval, he must pass through the same structure. His title cannot erase the threshold. You imagine him approaching the gate in full divine splendor. Wind moves around his robes. Dust circles his feet. The horned crown upon his head marks a rank feared across the inhabited lands. The guardians do not kneel. They bow with respect, but they remain in place. Enlil presents his request. The seal is examined. The purpose is recorded. For one brief moment, the Lord of Command stands outside a closed door. The image feels almost impossible. It is also revealing. Power becomes visible through those who must wait. The greater the authority beyond the gate, the more carefully access is controlled. A fringe interpretation describes heavenly gatekeepers as security officers protecting restricted knowledge or advanced technology. No accepted archaeological evidence supports such claims. The idea remains attractive because ancient texts often portray divine spaces as guarded, layered, and difficult to enter. Sacred objects are protected, names are concealed. Unauthorized approach brings danger. Yet ritual boundaries offer a stronger explanation. Temples required controlled access because sacred presence demanded preparation. Priests washed, changed garments, avoided impurities, and followed precise procedures before entering restricted areas. The divine gate magnifies this earthly practice. Heaven becomes the most restricted sanctuary imaginable. The highest court is not hidden because it is weak. It is hidden because unregulated contact would collapse the distinction between ordinary and sacred space. You place your palm near the bronze surface. The metal radiates cold without touching your skin. Behind it lies judgment, ancestry, and the source of recognition upon which lesser powers depend. The gatekeepers remain motionless. Their silence is not empty. It communicates that every approach is observed, measured, and remembered. Must be announced. Commands must be carried through proper channels. Even Enlil must stand before those who guard another being's door. The open scholarly question concerns whether such guardians possessed independent divine authority or served mainly as extensions of the rulers they protected. Surviving texts give different answers across periods and cities. Some gatekeepers have names, families, and distinct roles. Others appear only as functions. This uncertainty makes them more intriguing. A servant without personal ambition may be perfectly loyal. A guardian with identity and judgment may become something more powerful, the keeper of what the ruler is allowed to know. Night deepens around the gate. The stars seem fixed above its carved surface. No breeze reaches this threshold. No insect disturbs the stillness. You wait without invitation. At last, a faint sound passes through the bronze doors. It may be a decree, it may be a warning. The gatekeepers do not react. Their task is not to interpret what happens within. Their task is to preserve the distance that makes the hidden authority feared, and the doors remain closed. The ground beneath the divine court carries a memory older than human footsteps. You feel it through the stone, a faint vibration that seems unrelated to wind or thunder. The hall is empty, yet the silence has weight. Something happened here when no city had walls, no farmer cut canals, and no king pressed his seal into clay. The crime belongs to the age of gods. No mortal witnessed it. No human judge recorded its first hearing. Only fragments remain, preserved in stories copied long after the event was believed to have occurred. They speak of labor, rebellion, violated order, and a punishment whose consequences reached far beyond the guilty. You walk toward a circular mark set into the floor. Its dark stone differs from the pale slab surrounding it. Fine lines radiate outward like cracks across dry earth. A priest might call it the place where judgment descended. No one stands upon it willingly. The earliest divine conflict begins with work. Younger gods labour under burdens assigned by older powers. They clear channels, raise embankments, and maintain the systems that keep the ordered world functioning. Their bodies are divine, but their frustration sounds remarkably human. The labour continues for years. Tools strike earth, baskets rise and fall. Commands arrive from distant seats. At last, endurance becomes anger. Records confirm that one ancient Mesopotamian creation account describes lesser gods rebelling against exhausting labour. They surround the dwelling of Enlil, discard their tools, and demand relief from conditions they can no longer accept. This is no minor complaint. It is an attack upon the structure of heaven. The workers are not questioning one task. They challenge the arrangement that gives older gods comfort while younger gods carry the burden. The council must respond. Enlil wakes to noise beyond his gate. He calls for weapons, messengers, and loyal guards. His first reaction is defensive because rebellion has reached his own threshold. You imagine the sound. Tools strike the ground outside the residence. Torches hiss in the night air. Divine voices rise together, not in prayer but accusation. The Lord of Command is surrounded. For once, he does not control the gathering. A messenger enters the residence and reports that the rebels demand negotiation. They are prepared to destroy the system rather than continue serving it. Enlil asks who began the uprising. The question seems practical. It is also dangerous. A rebellion with one leader can be punished through one body. A rebellion shared by everyone threatens the entire order. The assembled gods answer carefully. There is no single rebel. All have agreed. Their unity changes the judgment. Anu is called from the highest realm, not because the dispute concerns one city, but because the cosmic hierarchy itself faces collapse. He arrives without display, carrying the authority of seniority. The council forms around him. No one speaks lightly. The rebels explain their suffering. They describe endless work, harsh oversight, and a structure that consumes their strength without relief. Enlil listens with visible restraint. He has been challenged, surrounded, and awakened by force. His anger is understandable within the logic of kingship, yet Anu does not immediately condemn the workers. He asks whether their complaint is true. That question unsettles the court. It shifts attention from disobedience toward cause. The rebels may have violated order, but perhaps order violated them first. Scholars continue debating how much social history survives within this myth. Some interpret the divine labour dispute as a reflection of ancient workers, irrigation demands, and unequal institutions. Others view it primarily as a theological explanation for humanity's purpose. The two readings can exist together. Myth often transforms social tension into cosmic memory. Human listeners understand divine labour because they know forced service, taxation, and exhaustion. A god carrying soil is still a worker. One quirky detail is that the rebellious gods reportedly burn or abandon their tools, turning ordinary equipment into symbols of refusal. The act feels startlingly modern. Even immortals know the value of a dramatic workplace gesture. The humour fades when judgment begins. Someone must bear responsibility for the uprising. The system cannot simply continue unchanged, yet authority cannot appear powerless. A solution takes shape. One divine figure will be selected as the source of rebellion. That being will be killed, and his substance will be used in the creation of humanity. The punishment becomes an origin. Humans will take over the labour once assigned to lesser gods. They will dig canals, cultivate fields, prepare offerings, and maintain temples. Creation is not presented as pure generosity. It is administrative repair. You hear the chamber darken around this decision. The selected being is sometimes named in ways that vary across surviving traditions and interpretations. His identity is uncertain, but his role is clear. He carries guilt. His death restores order. His remains enter the human form. This creates an unsettling inheritance. Humanity receives life through a punished divine rebel. Labor enters human existence not as accident, but as the purpose of creation. The crime remains inside the solution. Perhaps this is why humans are imagined as both useful and dangerous. They are made to serve order, yet part of their origin comes from resistance against order. Obedience and rebellion enter the same body. You look down at your hands. They seem ordinary beneath the dim light, marked with dust from the stone floor. Yet the myth asks you to imagine them carrying a fragment of ancient conflict. The hands can build a temple. They can also drop the basket. The hands can press a royal decree into clay. They can also break the seal. Human nature becomes divided because creation itself begins with division. Anu presides over the judgment and does not perform the labor, and he may not choose the victim personally in every version. Still, his approval transforms the act into lawful sacrifice rather than revenge. Enlil cannot resolve the rebellion alone. His authority was the object of attack. Any punishment issued only by him might appear personal, driven by insult rather than justice. The higher court must legitimize the response. This is where fear enters more deeply. Enlil faces not only rebels, but the possibility that Anu may judge his management responsible for the crisis. A ruler who drives every servant into revolt has failed, even if the servants disobeyed. The question hangs unspoken. Did Enlil protect order, or did his rule create the danger? No tablet offers a simple answer. The surviving narrative distributes blame carefully. The rebels violate hierarchy, their suffering is acknowledged. One being bears punishment. Humanity carries the labor. Everyone receives consequence. No one receives complete innocence. A fringe interpretation claims the myth records genetic creation by advanced beings who engineered humans as workers. Accepted archaeology does not support the literal reading. The story itself requires no hidden laboratory. Ancient people already understood breeding, birth, blood, clay, and inherited obligation. They used familiar materials to imagine how divine purpose entered human bodies. Clay represented the earth. Divine substance represented life. Labor represented necessity. The myth explains why people work until their backs ache while gods receive offerings inside cool sanctuaries. It is a difficult explanation. Brutally honest, creation emerges from conflict rather than harmony. Humanity appears because the divine system needs relief. The human role is useful from the first breath. You hear the imagined sound of wet clay being shaped. A mother goddess works beside a vessel while others observe. Her hands press form into softness. The air smells of earth, water, and something metallic. The process is sacred. It is also practical. The first humans are not crowned as rulers of creation. They are assigned a task. Yet the crime within their origin prevents perfect obedience. Perhaps the divine rebel's memory survives as ambition, refusal, curiosity, and the stubborn desire to question commands. It is possible that the council never fully solved the uprising. It transferred the burden. The younger gods receive rest. Humanity receives toil. Enlil keeps his office. Anu preserves the hierarchy. Still, the old tension remains alive in every field, workshop, and city wall built by hands that eventually grow tired. You step away from the circular mark. The stone beneath it feels warmer now, as though the ancient judgment has not completely cooled. The court remains empty. The crime is long finished, yet its sentence continues wherever human beings work beneath powers they cannot reach. You enter a chamber without doors, where the walls seem carved from darkness rather than stone. No torch burns here, no incense rises, the air carries no scent except the faint mineral cold of a place untouched by weather. At the center stands a throne. It is larger than any seat built for a king, yet no figure occupies it. The surface bears no crown. Animal, star, or sacred tree, every familiar symbol has been removed. The emptiness feels older than decoration. You move closer, hearing only the soft rhythm of your breathing. The floor beneath you reflects no face. Even your Huado seems unwilling to cross the final steps. Ancient religion often gives names to power. A storm becomes a god. A river receives a guardian. The moon takes a place within a divine family. Illness, wisdom, love, war, and death gain personalities that can be praised, feared, or persuaded. Names make the unseen approachable. They also create limits. Once a force receives a name, it enters relationship. Priests compose hymns, artists choose symbols, scribes record parents, children, cities, titles, and rivalries. The unknown becomes part of a system, yet systems sometimes preserve signs of something they cannot fully contain. A title appears without a clear identity. A supreme rank exists without a detailed story. A divine ancestor stands behind the active gods, then fades into silence. Such traces invite a difficult question. What if the highest named god is not the highest power? Records confirm that Mesopotamian scholars created long lists organizing divine names, functions, families, and equivalent titles. These lists were not random collections. They were intellectual attempts to bring order to centuries of changing worship. A god known in one city might be matched with another elsewhere. A rare title could be explained through a more familiar name. Several local forms might be gathered beneath one larger identity. The scribes built maps of heaven. Still, every map has an edge. Beyond the known gods may stand fate, necessity, primeval waters, or an unnamed source from which divine order itself emerges. These powers do not always behave like ordinary members of the pantheon. They can resemble conditions of existence. The gods live within them. The gods do not necessarily command them. Your eyes adjust to the dimness. Behind the throne, faint lines appear upon the wall. They do not form writing. They resemble waves, roots, or paths spreading outward from a point hidden beneath the stone. The pattern suggests origin without explanation. Some ancient traditions describe the world beginning through mingled waters, darkness, separation, or generations of primordial beings. Later gods inherit a cosmos already shaped by forces older than their own rule. A divine king may govern creation. That does not mean he created the conditions that made creation possible. Anu can represent the highest heaven. Enlil can command the inhabited world. Yet both may exist within a deeper structure of time, destiny, and necessity. This possibility changes fear. Enlil may fear Anu as a superior ruler. The council may fear something older as an unavoidable law. A ruler can be persuaded. A law cannot. You imagine the gods gathered around the empty seat. No one claims it. Anu remains nearby, dignified but watchful. Enlil stands with his staff lowered. The divine scribe holds a tablet without beginning the first line. They are not waiting for a person. They are waiting for permission from the structure beneath reality. The distinction is subtle. It is also immense. Hence, a fringe interpretation proposes that the familiar gods served an older intelligence whose name was deliberately removed from surviving records. Some modern storytellers imagine a hidden ruler, an unknown creator, or a being concealed behind Anu's authority. No accepted archaeological evidence confirms such a secret figure. The idea survives because ancient texts contain gaps, contradictions, and remote powers that resist simple classification. Human imagination prefers a face behind mystery even when the evidence offers only silence. Perhaps no hidden being existed. Perhaps the throne belongs to fate itself. Mesopotamian literature sometimes treats destiny as something declared, assigned, or fixed through divine decision. Yet those who assign destiny may also remain subject to boundaries they cannot freely break. This creates a paradox. The gods determine fate. The gods also fear fate. Scholars continue debating whether ancient Mesopotamians imagined destiny as an independent force, or as the collective authority of the divine assembly. Different texts suggest different answers. The uncertainty matters. If fate is only a decree, then a powerful god may alter it. If fate exists beyond the gods, then even divine kings live beneath a greater order. You run your fingers across the edge of the empty throne. The surface feels smooth, without any mark of use. It may never have held a body. It may represent an authority too abstract for human shape. Ancient artists often gave cosmic concepts human features because personality made them easier to understand. Yet some ideas resisted complete personification. Time passes without a face. Necessity does not require a crown. Silence needs no temple. A quirky detail from ancient scholarly tradition is that scribes sometimes wrote explanatory commentaries so dense that later readers needed explanations for the explanations. The search for ultimate meaning created its own small mountain of clay. Such efforts reveal serious intellectual curiosity. Priests and scholars were not merely repeating stories. They compared names, interpreted symbols, and searched for hidden relationships among divine powers. They understood that myths contained layers. A god's public stream might hide a theological principle. A family relationship might represent a connection between natural forces. A divine marriage could express the union of regions, cities, or cosmic functions. The throne behind the throne may therefore be an idea. It may represent the principle that no authority is absolute. Every ruler receives power from a structure. Every structure rests upon something deeper. Every explanation eventually reaches darkness. You hear a faint sound above the chamber. It resembles distant water moving through stone. The noise has no visible source, yet it seems older than temples and older than speech. Your mind drifts toward the first landscape. No cities stand there. No canals divide fields. The sky has not yet received its familiar order. Darkness rests upon water, and no human voice names what moves beneath it. In that imagined beginning, the later gods do not yet hold office. There are no kings of heaven. There are only conditions, depth, silence, possibility. The world waits without knowing it is waiting. From this view, Anu is not the final origin. He is the first recognizable height within a reality already unfolding. Enlil is not the first command. He is the voice that organizes a world containing older forces. The council inherits creation. It does not necessarily begin it. This may explain why divine authority often feels both immense and constrained. The gods can shape rivers, kingship, harvests, and human destinies, yet they cannot escape the fundamental laws of existence. They act within time. They respond to consequences. They preserve order because disorder threatens them as well. A truly absolute being would not require a council. It would not negotiate. It would not defend its rank. The presence behind the throne may therefore be less personal and more terrifying. It may be the possibility that the universe does not belong completely to anyone, not even to the gods. You notice that Enlil avoids looking directly at the empty seat. His fear may not concern punishment from a hidden ruler. It may concern meaninglessness. The discovery that command is temporary and authority is borrowed. A god can endure defeat. Can a god endure irrelevance? Seas once filled with his hymns may fall silent. Priests may stop carrying offerings. New rulers may elevate another deity. His name may survive only on broken tablets beneath abandoned walls. Divine power depends partly upon memory. The unnamed force does not. It requires no worship because it exists whether anyone remembers it or not. It needs no statue because it cannot be reduced to form. Perhaps this is what the council fears. A power beyond praise, a law beyond negotiation, a silence beyond command. The throne remains empty as you step away. No hidden figure emerges. No secret name appears upon the wall. Only the dark pattern continues spreading behind the seat, like roots beneath a city or water beneath dry ground. It is possible that nothing waits there. It is also possible that the absence is the oldest presence of all. You walk to the sound of water striking packed earth. A line of workers moves beside a new canal, each carrying a basket filled with wet soil. Their shoulders shine beneath the sun. Mud clings to their legs. while overseers call for steady movement along the embankment. The work never truly ends. Channels fill with silt, walls weaken, fields require measuring, clearing, planting, and harvesting. Grain must be carried into storage rooms, then counted, guarded, ground, baked, brewed, and offered. Civilization demands hands. In the oldest creation traditions of Mesopotamia, humanity often appears within this practical need. People are not shaped merely to admire the stars or wander peacefully through gardens. They are created because labor has become a divine problem. The gods require relief. You follow the workers toward a broad field where barley bends under a dry wind, sickles flash among the stalks. Children gather fallen grain behind the adults, while oxen pull loaded sledges toward the settlement. Every movement supports the sacred order. Food enters households, surplus enters storerooms, offerings enter temples. The system connects human exhaustion with divine comfort. Records confirm that large temple institutions organized extensive agricultural labor across ancient Mesopotamia. Administrators tracked workers, fields, animals, rations, and deliveries through thousands of clay records. The gods owned estates through their temples. Human beings maintain them. This earthly arrangement gives the creation stories a recognizable shape. A divine household resembles a royal household, and both require servants. The cosmos becomes an enormous estate whose smooth operation depends upon assigned duties. You enter a workshop filled with the scent of wool, dye, and heated clay. Women sit beside looms, guiding threads through stretched frames. Potters turn wet vessels beneath skilled hands. Metalworkers feed charcoal into furnaces where copper glows within dark crucibles. No single craft appears grand. Together they build a city. Humanity's purpose expands beyond digging canals. People produce garments for divine statues, vessels for ritual meals, bricks for sacred buildings, and instruments for temple musicians. They create the material world of worship. A god may inhabit heaven, yet his earthly household needs cooks. This is one of the quieter ironies of sacred power. Immortal beings are imagined as independent, but their temples depend upon constant human attention. Without workers, offerings stop, roofs collapse, statues gather dust, and hymns fade into silence. Divine presence requires maintenance. Creation therefore solves more than physical labor. It establishes a relationship of dependence concealed beneath hierarchy. Humans serve the gods. The gods also require human service. You pass through a temple kitchen where bread cools upon reed mats. Large jars hold beer prepared for ceremony. A butcher sharpens a blade beside a table, while another worker measures dates into a bowl. The atmosphere feels closer to an organized household than a mysterious sanctuary. That familiarity matters. Ancient worship often treated divine beings as residents with needs, preferences, and daily routines. Meals arrived at appointed times. Garments changed according to festivals, so music accompanied formal appearances. The gods live through ritual schedules. One quirky detail from administrative tablets is the extraordinary variety of bread and beer recorded for offerings. Different shapes, ingredients, and quantities could be assigned to particular ceremonies. Heaven apparently appreciated a well-managed menu, yet the abundance placed heavy demands upon ordinary people. Farmers surrendered produce, shepherds supplied animals, craftspeople met quotas, laborers received rations that reflected rank, age, and assigned task. Sacred order was not equally comfortable for everyone. A high official might enjoy fine food near the temple court. A canal worker might receive measured grain after hours beneath the sun. Both served the same divine system, though they experienced it differently. You sense this inequality along the canal bank. An older laborer pauses to stretch his back. His hands are cracked from mud and rope. He watches the temple rise beyond the fields, its upper walls glowing in the afternoon light. Perhaps he feels pride, perhaps he feels resentment, perhaps both emotions share the same breath. Creation stories rarely preserve the private thoughts of such workers. They explain the system from above, describing why humanity exists and what duties follow. The labourer lives the explanation from below. Scholars continue debating how directly divine labour myths reflect economic conditions in early states. Some see clear echoes of compulsory service, irrigation work, and temple-controlled production. Others caution that mythic labour carries theological meanings beyond social history. The debate remains open because the stories operate on several levels. They explain human toil, divine hierarchy, mortality, ritual obligation, and the uneasy bond between creators and servants. No single interpretation captures every layer. You move toward a dim room where a birth goddess kneels beside prepared clay. The scene belongs to sacred imagination, but its materials are familiar. Clay comes from the riverbank, water softens it, hands give it form. Life emerges from common earth. The choice of clay is not accidental. People build houses, tablets, jars, ovens, and city walls from the same substance. Clay receives form, dries, cracks, and eventually returns to dust. Humanity shares this pattern. Bodies are shaped. Bodies endure. Bodies weaken. Bodies return. The divine element changes the mixture. In several creation traditions, the substance of a slain god enters the clay. Blood, flesh, or another sacred essence gives humanity intelligence, spirit, or awareness. The worker therefore carries two inheritances. Earth provides fragility. Divinity provides consciousness. The result is a being strong enough to serve, yet aware enough to question service. This may be the central flaw within the solution. A tool does not ask why it works. A human being does. You hear the first created people breathing in the dark room. Their eyes open slowly. They see the hands that shaped them, the waiting gods, and the baskets already prepared nearby. No long childhood protects them. Purpose arrives immediately. They are told to maintain canals, feed temples, cultivate fields, and relieve divine labour. Their first inheritance is obligation. The scene feels calm. It is also deeply unsettling. A fringe interpretation presents this story as evidence that powerful beings engineered humanity for resource extraction. Accepted archaeology has not established such a literal event. The myth does, however, preserve an unmistakable image of designed labour. Human beings are created with a function in mind, and that function benefits those above them. Ancient listeners may have found this explanation natural. Their societies already depended upon assigned roles. Kings claimed divine appointment. Priests managed sacred estates. Workers inherited duties shaped by family, status, and local need. The cosmos resembled the city. Still, the myth contains a quiet instability. Humanity multiplies. Skills develop. Settlements. Workers become builders, merchants, scribes, healers, soldiers, musicians, and rulers. The created servants begin producing worlds of their own. A person shaped to carry soil learns to record accounts. A person assigned to harvest grain learns to measure stars. A person made to serve the temple learns to ask what stands beyond the temple. Purpose begins to widen. You walk through a busy street at evening. Oil sellers call from narrow stalls. Children chase one another between doorways. A musician tunes a stringed instrument while a brewer seals jars for the night. This life exceeds simple labour. People joke, mourn, love, argue, decorate walls, tell stories, and dream of futures no divine decree fully predicts. Humanity becomes more than the solution imagined at creation. Perhaps this unexpected growth explains divine unease. The council wanted worker. It received memory, ambition, grief, curiosity, and rebellion. It received beings who could preserve the names of gods, but also outlive particular forms of worship. It received servants capable of becoming kings. Enlil may view this expansion as disorder. Other gods may see opportunity. A humanity capable of independent thought can become troublesome. Yet it can also become loyal through choice rather than simple design. The relationship grows complicated. You return to the canal as twilight settles across the fields. The labourers wash mud from their hands. Their baskets lie empty beside the embankment. Tomorrow, the work begins again. The gods have received relief. The city has received life. Humanity has received a purpose, though perhaps not a final one. You watch the dark water moving between the banks. It carries silt, reflections, and fragments of reeds toward places beyond sight. The current follows its channel. Yet water always remembers other paths. The night air hangs heavily above the city, carrying smoke, sweat, and the restless murmur of thousands of lives. You stand upon a flat roof while voices rise from streets below. A baby cries behind one wall. A potter strikes clay from a mould. Somewhere near the market, two men argue over a debt. Dogs bark. Doors close. A late cart rattles across hardened ground. The city does not sleep quietly. To human ears, these sounds are ordinary signs of life. To Enlil, they become something larger, a disturbance spreading across the ordered world. The complaint begins with noise. Ancient flood traditions describe humanity multiplying until its clamour troubles the gods. The precise meaning of that clamour remains debated. It may suggest literal sound, social disorder, rebellion, overcrowding, or the burdens created by expanding civilization. Whatever the cause, Enlil decides that the disturbance must be reduced. His problem is not one criminal, it is humanity itself. You look across the rooftops and see lamps burning in hundreds of homes. Every flame marks a family preparing food, telling stories, settling quarrels, or comforting a frightened child. From the street, the city feels alive. From a divine height, it may feel uncontrolled. Records confirm that ancient Mesopotamian cities grew into complex centers filled with workshops, temples, markets, canals, officials, laborers, and competing loyalties. Their survival depended upon order, yet their scale naturally created noise and tension. Crowded life requires rules. It also produces resistance. Enlil governs through boundaries, duties, and proper arrangement. Humanity repeatedly crosses those boundaries, sometimes through simple growth rather than deliberate rebellion. More people require more land. More land requires more canals. More canals require more labour. Greater wealth attracts rivalry, corruption, and war. The solution created for divine labour becomes a new source of divine difficulty. You hear thunder beyond the eastern horizon. No rain falls yet, but the sound travels across the plain like a warning carried beneath the clouds. People in the streets glance upward, then continue their work. They have heard storms before. They do not know this one is being discussed in heaven. Enlil first chooses measured punishments. Disease spreads through households. Fields weaken. Hunger enters the city. The suffering is meant to reduce human numbers and restore quiet. Yet humanity survives. A wise god secretly advises people to redirect their prayers and offerings toward the powers connected with each disaster. Ritual attention changes, and the punishments lose their intended force. Enlil sees interference. His frustration deepens. The conflict is no longer only between a god and humanity. It becomes a disagreement among gods concerning whether the human population should be preserved. Some divine beings depend upon human offerings. Others feel sympathy for the vulnerable. Enlil sees a system escaping control. The scholarly debate remains open regarding why noise holds such importance within the story. Some researchers interpret it as a symbol of social unrest. Others connect it with population pressure, ritual disorder, or memories of political instability. The text does not define the complaint clearly. That uncertainty gives the noise an almost universal quality. It can become whatever rulers does fear most. Disobedience, unpredictability, crowds gathering without permission, voices too numerous to silence individually. You descend from the roof and move through a narrow lane where rainwater has carved shallow lines into the earth. A woman pours grain into a stone grinder. Her movements are tired but steady. She has not rebelled against heaven. She has simply lived. Nearby, a child draws circles in dust with a broken reed. He laughs when a dog steps across the pattern. His laughter joins the city's clamour. The flood tradition makes this ordinary innocence difficult to ignore. Divine punishment falls collectively. Even though most people possess no knowledge of the decision that condemns them, this creates one of the deepest moral tensions in the story. Can order justify and discriminate destruction? Enlil believes the crisis has reached a point where limited measures no longer work. Humanity adapts, multiplies, and continues disturbing the divine world. He prepares a final response. Water will erase the noise. The decision is presented as council policy. Yet not every god accepts it peacefully. Some agree publicly, then grieve privately. Others remain silent because opposing Enlil carries danger. The atmosphere resembles a court where obedience hides unease. A quirky detail within ancient flood traditions is that the gods themselves later panic when the waters rise. They retreat upward, frightened by the scale of the destruction they approved. The image is almost absurd. Immortal beings authorize catastrophe, then recoil when catastrophe behaves catastrophically. Yet the scene also exposes the limits of divine foresight. A decision may appear clean in council language. Its reality is different. You smell the first rain before it reaches the city. The scent rises from dust and dry brick, cool and metallic. People smile as drops strike roofs and courtyards. Rain means relief after heat. No one understands the scale. Clouds thicken until the stars disappear. Wind tears through reeds. Canals swell beyond their banks, carrying branches, tools, roof mats, and broken jars. The city's familiar sounds vanish beneath water. Enlil has achieved silence. It is a terrible silence. The mainstream historical fact beneath these stories is that flooding shaped life across Mesopotamia. Rivers brought fertile soil, but sudden changes in water levels could destroy settlements, fields, and storage systems. Archaeological excavations have revealed flood deposits at several ancient sites, though not one single layer covering every city at the same time. This evidence supports memories of severe regional floods rather than proving one universal event. Myth gathers separate disasters into a larger moral narrative. Water becomes judgment, survival becomes divine favor, memory becomes warning. You watch a vessel rise upon the dark current. Inside, a human survivor protects family members, animals, seeds, and the knowledge needed to begin again. His escape depends upon a secret warning that breaks the council's agreement. The god who advises him does not challenge Enlil openly. Instead, he speaks indirectly, allowing the warning to pass through a wall or dream. The method respects the letter of the oath while defeating its purpose. Divine politics becomes wordplay. It is clever. It is also dangerous. When the waters finally retreat, the survivor offers sacrifice. The scent rises toward heaven, and the hungry gods gather around it. This moment reveals their dependence with uncomfortable clarity. They try to destroy humanity. Then they miss the offerings. Enlil arrives and discovers that someone has survived. His anger returns immediately. The flood was meant to end the problem completely. A surviving family means the human story continues. The other gods confront him more directly now. Destruction has failed to create balance. It has only exposed how closely divine comfort depends upon mortal life. Alternative controls are proposed. Human lifespan may be limited. Infant mortality, infertility, and religious restrictions may reduce population without ending humanity altogether. The solution becomes regulation rather than extinction. Enlil accepts a compromise. This does not make him gentle, it makes him practical. A fringe interpretation claims the flood story preserves a deliberate attempt by powerful beings to reset an engineered population. Accepted archaeology does not support that literal reading. The narrative itself offers a more human concern. Authority often creates the very disorder it later punishes. A system demands growth, labour, and production. Then it becomes frightened when the population grows too large, too capable, or too difficult to manage. Humanity was created to support divine order. Its success becomes the threat. You stand beside receding water as dawn spreads over the ruined plain. Mud covers streets where markets once opened. Broken beams lean against walls. Fish move through courtyards. The silence Enlil wanted has arrived. It does not feel peaceful. Peace contains life at rest. This silence contains absence. Perhaps Enlil understands the difference only now. Perhaps he remains convinced that necessity justified the decision. The stories do not grant him a simple confession of regret. They leave him powerful, feared, and constrained by the consequences of his own judgment. Human beings begin again beneath a new arrangement. Their lives are shorter. Their numbers are managed. Their vulnerability becomes part of cosmic order. Yet the city's noise eventually returns. Children laugh, hammers strike, merchants argue, families gather beneath lamps. Enlil cannot remove humanity without weakening the world the gods expect to govern. His problem is no longer how to silence people. It is how to rule beings whose existence cannot remain quiet. The council chamber is brighter than usual, yet every face appears guarded beneath the lamps. You stand near a carved pillar while Enlil rises from his seat. His robe falls in heavy folds, and the staff in his hand touches the floor with a quiet knock. A decision has been made. I intends to punish a city whose ruler has ignored sacred boundaries. The offence concerns more than unpaid offerings or broken ceremony. The king has claimed authority that belongs to the gods. Enlil calls the act intolerable. His voice moves through the chamber like pressure before rain. Several deities lower their eyes. Others watch closely, waiting to learn whether anger will become decree. The punishment Enlil proposes is severe. The city will lose protection. Its walls will fail. Its canals will dry, and its ruler will be abandoned by the power he falsely claimed. No one speaks at first. The silence gives Enlil room to continue. He describes rebellion as a sickness. If left untreated, it may spread through neighboring cities and weaken the entire structure of kingship. His argument is careful. A ruler who denies heaven teaches others to do the same. One act of defiance may become a pattern. A pattern may become collapse. The council understands the danger. Yet understanding danger does not require accepting every response. A second voice enters the chamber. It is calm, distant, and impossible to ignore. Anu does not rise, and does not challenge Enlil with anger. He asks one question concerning proportion. Will the destruction restore order, or will it create a deeper wound? The room changes immediately. Enlil turns toward the higher seat. His expression remains controlled, but the command in his posture narrows into caution. This is not refusal yet. It is something more difficult. It is examination. Ancient Mesopotamian tradition repeatedly shows divine power operating through approval, consultation, and negotiated rank. Great gods may act forcefully, but their choices often enter a wider framework of judgment. Records from temple archives confirm that earthly rulers also depended upon layered permission. Governors answered to kings, priests answered to temple authorities. Local officials answered to both, which likely made ordinary paperwork wonderfully peaceful. The divine court reflects this structure. Enlil can initiate punishment. Anu can question its legitimacy. You hear the soft scrape of a reed against clay. The divine scribe records the proposed decree, then pauses before writing the final line. Until approval is given, the punishment remains intention rather than law. That pause reveals everything. Enlil possesses force. Anu controls recognition. The difference is greater than it first appears. Force can destroy a city. Recognition determines whether the destruction belongs to order or becomes an act of private wrath. Enlil speaks again. He explains that delay will encourage rebellion. He reminds the council that kingship survives only because rulers believe divine authority will answer defiance. If punishment becomes uncertain, fear will weaken. Anu listens without interruption. Then he asks whether fear alone can sustain loyalty. The question travels beyond the immediate dispute. Every god in the chamber understands its meaning. Authority built only upon terror must constantly prove its power. Each punishment invites another. Each display creates a larger need for display. Eventually, command becomes trapped by its own severity. Scholars continue debating whether such divine disagreements reflect theological differences between major religious centers. A story favoring one god may soften another god's authority, while preserving both within a shared sacred system. The evidence does not always reveal which version came first. Myths changed as cities gained influence, lost power, and absorbed neighboring traditions. A god presented as supreme in one place might appear restrained elsewhere. Heaven followed politics. Politics borrowed heaven. The exact direction remains uncertain. You look toward the imagined city awaiting judgment. Its ruler stands upon the palace terrace, unaware that divine approval hangs upon a single unwritten line. Below him, workers repair walls, priests prepare offerings, children carry water through narrow streets. The king may be guilt. The city is larger than the king. Anu's question gives that distinction weight. Should an entire population suffer because one ruler confuses ambition with divinity? Enlil answers that kings represent their cities. A ruler's oath binds the land. His failure therefore carries collective consequence. This idea is deeply rooted within ancient kingship. The ruler stands between heaven and society. He performs rituals, maintains temples, protects justice, and ensures proper order. When he fails, the failure extends beyond his body. Yet this sacred responsibility can also hide ordinary victims. A council punishes a king. Farmers lose crops. Families lose homes. The difference between symbolic judgment and lived suffering is often measured by those with the least power. Anu does not dismiss Enlil's concern. Instead, he narrows the punishment. The ruler will lose divine favor. His dynasty will end. The city itself will be given a chance to return to proper order under another king. The decision is restraint, but not mercy without consequence. Enlil must accept a boundary. He cannot erase the city simply because its ruler provoked him. You hear his staff shift against the floor. For a moment, it seems that he may refuse. The wind outside the chamber rises, pressing dust against the bronze doors. No one moves. Enlil looks toward the waiting scribe. The final line remains empty. Without Anu's approval, the decree will not carry the full authority of heaven. This is the moment of containment. The strongest command in the room meets a stronger permission. Enlil lowers his staff. The scribe writes, "The city will endure. The dynasty will not." One quirky detail from Mesopotamian political life is that rulers often describe themselves as humble servants of the gods while surrounding themselves with palaces, guards, tribute, and titles of impressive length. Humility was apparently easier when carved into stone by someone else, yet the language mattered. A king could be powerful, but he was expected to acknowledge the source above him. When he claimed too much, divine tradition provided a way to explain his fall. Anu's restraint of Enlil follows the same logic. No office is legitimate when it forgets what grants that office meaning. The fringe possibility imagines Anu as an actual superior commander who limited Enlil's actions through a formal hierarchy. No accepted archaeological evidence proves such a literal chain of non-human rulers. Still, the stories preserve an unmistakable concern with controlled power. Commands require witnesses. Punishments require proportion. Authority requires approval. These are not signs of weakness within the system. They are the system's defense against self-destruction. You return your attention to Enlil. His fear does not appear as trembling or panic. It appears as restraint accepted under observation, and fears becoming unlawful. And fears acting without the recognition that separates divine command from violence. He fears the possibility that the council may obey him physically while judging him illegitimate. This is a deeper danger than open rebellion. A ruler can crush resistance. He cannot easily govern once belief disappears. Anu understands that power survives through more than force. It survives because others accept its place within an order larger than individual will. Perhaps this is why his quiet intervention carries such weight. He does not need to defeat Enlil. He only needs to withhold agreement. The council disperses slowly. Some gods speak in low voices near the doorway. Others leave without comment. The divine scribe lifts the completed tablet and places it inside a sealed case. Enlil remains alone beside the table. The rejected decree lies nearby, still soft enough for its signs to be smoothed away. He studies it for several moments. Then his hand passes across the clay. The city he intended to erase survives within that simple gesture. Outside, the wind weakens. Far below, a palace guard watches the horizon without knowing how closely destruction approached. In the temple courtyard, priests continue preparing the evening meal. No thunder falls, no wall breaks. The ruler's fate has changed, though the city still breathes. Enlil turns from the erased tablet. The council has not taken away his power. It has shown him where that power ends. A cold wind moves across the highlands, carrying the scent of pine, stone, and distant snow. You leave the flat river plains behind and enter a wider world of mountains, coastlines, deserts, and cities built from unfamiliar stone. Different people speak different languages, worship different gods, and carve their memories into different surfaces. Yet one pattern keeps returning. Above storms, kings, rivers, and cities stands a distant father of the sky. He appears under changing names and wears symbols shaped by local landscapes. Sometimes he rules from a mountain. Sometimes he remains beyond the clouds. Sometimes he withdraws while younger gods govern the visible world. The details change. The structure endures. You follow a narrow road into northern Syria, where merchants guide donkeys loaded with cedar, copper, dyed cloth, and jars of oil. City walls rise ahead beneath a sky coloured by evening dust. Within the temples, priests honour a divine family shaped by storm, sea, kingship, and fertility. A powerful storm god commands thunder and rain, protecting crops while threatening enemies. His authority is immediate. Farmers hear him in the clouds. Warriors invoke him before battle. Kings claim his support. Yet above this active stormlord stands an older divine father, remote and dignified. He is associated with wisdom, seniority, and the authority to confirm rank among younger gods. The resemblance is striking. Enlil commands through wind and order. Anu stands above him through age and heavenly sovereignty. Elsewhere, the same pattern appears with different names and relationships. The storm god may rebel, inherit, negotiate, or receive approval from an older ruler. The divine family becomes a political map. Records from ancient Syrian archives confirm that neighbouring cultures shared stories, divine titles, ritual forms, and scribal traditions across long distances. Merchants, diplomats, prisoners, priests, and royal marriages carried ideas between courts. Religious boundaries were never perfectly sealed. A god could cross a frontier more easily than an army. His name might change in pronunciation. His symbols might merge with those of a local deity. His family connections could be rearranged to fit another city's theology. Still, a recognizable role survived. The distant father remained above the active ruler. You enter a palace archive where clay tablets rest inside baskets along the walls. Scribes write in several languages because diplomacy requires flexibility. A treaty invokes goddies from both kingdoms. Each side calls upon its own divine witnesses. Yet the lists reveal overlap. Storm powers, sun judges, heavenly fathers, and protective goddesses stand together above the agreement. The treaty assumes that different pantheons can recognize one another. Heaven is multilingual. One quirky detail from ancient diplomacy is that rulers sometimes addressed foreign kings as brothers, even while planning to outmaneuver them through marriage, tribute, or carefully polished insults. Divine families could be equally courteous. A foreign god might be treated as an alternate form of a local power when politics required harmony. Theology became flexible enough to survive the banquet. You travel west toward the sea. Waves strike dark rock beneath cliffs covered with scrub and wind-bent trees. Ships move along the coast, carrying pottery, timber, metal, and stories across the water. Another tradition preserves a skyfather ruling an earlier generation of gods. His children inherit power through conflict and succession and rebellion. The family history is not peaceful. Older rulers are displaced. Younger gods divide the world. Storm, sea, and underworld become separate domains. The heavens again resemble a royal household where inheritance can become war. Scholars continue debating whether these similarities result from direct borrowing, shared ancient roots, or the repeated human tendency to imagine the cosmos through family and kingship. The evidence supports more than one path. Trade allowed stories to travel. Conquest forced traditions together. Human societies also face similar experiences with fathers, heirs, succession, and authority. The same political anxieties could produce similar myths without one single origin. You stand beside a harbour shrine where sailors place small offerings before departure. They do not care whether scholars classify their gods through shared tradition or independent development. They care about surviving the crossing. A storm god matters because waves can kill. A sky father matters because ultimate authority must exist somewhere above the confusion. The structure offers reassurance. If younger gods quarrel, perhaps an older order still contains them. If storms rage, perhaps the highest heaven remains stable. If kings fail, perhaps legitimacy survives beyond any single throne. This hope may explain why distant sovereigns appear across cultures. Visible powers are unpredictable. The hidden ruler represents continuity. You move north into a land of steep valleys and fortified cities. Reliefs show gods standing upon animals. Mountains, or symbolic platforms, horned crowns, winged discs, and raised weapons communicate rank without written explanation. The Stormlord appears vigorous and armed. The senior god appears seated. Posture becomes theology. The active deity stands because he acts. The highest authority sits because others act for him. This visual difference mirrors the old division between command and sovereignty. The one who strikes may not be the one who ultimately defines law. Across the highlands, ancient peoples preserve another remote sky figure who grants kingship while allowing more forceful gods to manage conflict below. Again, the highest power often speaks less. Silence becomes a symbol of rank. A fringe interpretation claims these repeating patterns preserve memories of one real council whose members ruled different regions under separate names. No accepted archaeological evidence proves a single hidden government behind the pantheons. The idea remains attractive because similarities appear across wide areas. Sky fathers, storm sons, divine councils, sacred mountains, and transferred kingship recur with remarkable persistence. Yet cultural exchange offers a stronger foundation. People moved constantly. Caravans crossed deserts, ships followed coastlines. Soldiers returned with foreign customs. Scribes copied stories from distant courts. A divine pattern could travel for centuries, changing at every stop while preserving its basic shape. You follow such a pattern eastward into the mountains beyond Mesopotamia. Here, rulers carve inscriptions upon rock faces high above roads. The gods named in those texts belong to another tradition, yet familiar concerns return. Who grants victory? Who confirms kingship? Who stands above the storm? Who judges the ruler when power becomes excessive? The answers differ, but the questions remain. Human societies repeatedly build heavenly models of authority because earthly authority is unstable. Kings die, dynasties collapse, conquerors replace local elites. A divine hierarchy offers continuity beyond political ruin. The sky father survives because heaven does not fall when a palace burns. You enter a ruined sanctuary at dusk. Broken columns lie among weeds. Lizards move through cracks where priests once carried offerings. No worshipper speaks the old god's name. Still, the building faces the sky. Its orientation preserves a relationship no surviving text fully explains. The community that built it may have understood heaven as a source of order, ancestry, and law. Their distant sovereign may not have resembled Anu exactly. Mine did not need to. The shared pattern matters more than identical details. An older authority stands above active power. A stormlord rules visibly. A hidden father confirms rank. A council divides responsibilities. The structure repeats because it answers a persistent human fear. Who restrains the ruler? If the strongest god becomes angry, who can stop him? If the king claims divine approval, who judges the claim? A higher father offers one solution. He stands beyond daily conflict and preserves the possibility that power can be reviewed from above. The open scholarly question concerns whether such figures began as personifications of the physical sky, or as divine versions of ancestral kings. Perhaps the two ideas merged. The sky is high, distant, and enduring. An ancestor is older, authoritative, and removed from daily life. Together, they create a ruler who governs through seniority rather than constant action. You hear a distant bell from a mountain settlement. The sound crosses valleys, fades against stone, and disappears into evening air. For a moment, each culture along your imagined journey seems to answer with its own echo. Different names rise, different hymns follow, yet the highest seat remains strangely familiar. The storm god commands the world below. The elder watches from beyond, and across kingdoms separated by sea, desert, and mountain. Rulers continue looking upward towards the authority they cannot fully reach. The temple courtyard lies empty beneath the last light of evening. You stand beside a stone basin where the water has stopped moving. The surface reflects a narrow strip of sky, pale and almost colourless. No birds cross it. No priest steps through the doorway. Nothing announces danger. That is what makes the silence. A violent god is easier to understand. Thunder breaks, walls tremble, animals panic, and people know that anger has entered the world. Fear becomes physical and immediate. Silence offers no such certainty. You cannot measure its distance. You cannot tell whether it means patience, absence, rejection, or judgment. The mind fills empty space with possibilities, and each possibility can feel more unsettling than the last. Ancient worshippers lived among signs. They watched the sky, listened to animals, studied dreams, examined strange births, and interpreted changes in weather. The world was filled with messages that might reveal divine intention. Our visible sign brought fear, but it also brought information. Moved that to comfort. You enter the sanctuary slowly. The oil lamps have been extinguished. A faint scent of cold incense clings to the plaster. The divine statue sits in shadow, its wide eyes facing forward without warmth or accusation. A priest has asked for guidance. No answer has come. This absence may concern a sick child, a threatened city, or a king awaiting an omen. The exact request matters less than the empty response. The worshipper does not know whether the ritual failed. Perhaps the offering was impure. Perhaps the words were incorrect. Perhaps the god has turned away. Records confirm that Mesopotamian prayers often express anxiety when divine favour seems withdrawn. Petitioners describe themselves as abandoned, confused, or punished without understanding the offence. This uncertainty gives divine steel and moral power. A person can defend against a known accusation. An unknown offence offers no clear remedy. Every action becomes suspicious because any action might have caused the distance. You hear the soft movement of cloth behind you. A priest enters carrying a lamp and places it near the statue. The flame reveals bowls of food that remain untouched by any visible hand. The ritual has been performed correctly. Still, the answer has not arrived. A storm god who sends rain declares presence. A healing god who restores health confirms attention. A silent god leaves the relationship uncertain. This uncertainty can produce deeper obedience than punishment. People repeat rituals more carefully. They offer additional gifts. They examine their conduct. They ask whether a forgotten promise, careless word, or neglected ancestor has disturbed the sacred order. Silence turns memory into a courtroom. You walk through the city at night. Doors are closed, but lamps glow behind woven screens. Families whisper about a failed harvest and an eclipse seen weeks earlier. A merchant wonders whether his dishonest measure has attracted divine anger. A soldier remembers an oath spoken too casually. A mother checks the protective charm near her child's bed. No one has received a clear warning. That is why every private fear becomes possible. Scholars continue debating how ancient people understood divine absence. Some interpret it as a theological response to suffering when no visible cause could be found. Others see it as ritual language that encouraged humility and continued devotion. Both explanations reveal the power of uncertainty. A god who always answers becomes predictable. A god who may remain silent cannot be mastered. You reach the city wall where guards watch the dark fields. One man hears movement beyond the reeds and raises his spear. The sound is only a bird settling near the canal. Visible danger would almost be a relief. I could face it. Instead, the night returns to stillness. The highest god resembles that darkness. He does not need to descend because his possible attention shapes behavior from a distance. Anu's silence carries rank. Enlil's anger can be heard in storm, decree, and destruction. People know when his will enters the world because the consequences are immediate. Anu does not need such display. His authority exists in what others anticipate. The council speaks more carefully because he may judge. Kings seek approval because he may withhold it. Priests preserve ceremony because his absence may signal displeasure. A loud ruler controls through command. A silent ruler controls through interpretation. One quirky detail from temple practice is that priests sometimes repeated questions through omen procedures when the first answer appeared unclear. Divine communication could require several attempts, corrections, and careful reconsideration. Even heaven, it seems, occasionally produced uncertain paperwork, yet the repetition served an important purpose. It kept human beings within the process. A clear refusal ends negotiation. An uncertain sign invites further ritual. The worshipper returns, offers more, listens more closely, and searches for hidden meaning. Extends devotion. This may sound calculated, but ancient people did not need cynical priests to experience uncertainty. Life itself provided enough unanswered suffering. A child became ill without warning. A river changed course. A good king lost a battle. A cruel man prospered. These events demanded explanation. When the gods did not speak clearly, people created prayers that admitted confusion while preserving faith in order. Perhaps the fault is hidden, perhaps the answer is delayed. Perhaps the highest purpose cannot yet be understood. Such thoughts protects the divine system from immediate collapse. They also deepen fear. You sit beneath a fig tree near the temple wall. The bark feels rough against your palm. Night insects begin their steady sound among the leaves. A violent god threatens the body. A silent god unsettles the mind. Physical danger ends when the storm passes or the army leaves. Uncertainty continues within memory, returning each time the world becomes quiet. This is why absence can feel greater than anger. Anger has shape. It rises, acts, and fades. Absence has no clear ending. A person may spend years trying to regain favor without knowing where the favor was ever lost. The divine silence becomes a mirror. The worshipper sees guilt, hope, resentment, and longing reflected within it. The god remains hidden while human emotion supplies the answer. A fringe interpretation claims that the remoteness of the highest gods reflects rulers who communicated only through chosen intermediaries. No accepted archaeological evidence proves such concealed beings governed ancient societies. Still, the pattern of distance and restricted access is historically familiar. Earthly kings often protected authority by appearing rarely. Ceremonies controlled their visibility. Officials spoke in their name. Subjects experienced the ruler through seals, decrees, taxes, and punishments rather than direct contact. The less accessible the king, the easier it became to imagine him as more than ordinary. Divine silence carried this principle beyond the palace. Anu could not be approached through ordinary need. His distance made him less familiar, and therefore less vulnerable to judgment. No one watched him hesitate.
So I'm very tired.
No one heard him offer an explanation. His silence preserved perfection by preventing inspection. The open scholarly debate concerns whether such remoteness reflects early political models or developed theological abstraction. Perhaps priests elevated the highest god beyond daily ritual. Perhaps worshippers gradually turned toward more responsive deities. Perhaps both processes strengthened each other. A distant god receives fewer ordinary prayers. Fewer ordinary prayers make him more distant. The silence grows through repetition. You return to the sanctuary. The lamp has burned lower. Shadows gather around the statue's face, leaving only the eyes visible. The priest knelt and does not ask for thunder. He asks for a sign small enough to understand. A dream, a favourable omen, a change in the child's breathing. Anything that confirms the god has not withdrawn completely. No answer comes while you watch. The priest remains kneeling. This patience reveals the deepest power of the silent divine. The worshipper continues without proof. Faith becomes endurance. Fear becomes attention. Hope becomes the refusal to leave. Outside, the city settles into sleep. Markets are closed. Tools lie beside unfinished work. Families draw mats across doorways. Above them, the sky remains clear. Enlil sends no storm. Anu sends no word. Yet the silence does not feel empty. It feels occupied by every judgment that might still be spoken. You enter a circular hall where 12 stone seats surround a floor marked with measured lines. No throne rises above the others here. Instead, every place faces the center, where a shallow basin holds clear water beneath an opening in the roof. Moonlight falls directly upon it. The surface remains still. Around the basin, symbols divide the floor into ordered regions. Some represent stars, others resemble rivers, mountains, plants, tools, and the branching forms of family lines. The design suggests a system older than ceremony. This is not merely where gods gather, it is where limits are remembered. The Anunnaki are often imagined as rulers whose power exceeds every human boundary. Yet ancient divine assemblies rarely behave like gatherings of completely independent beings. They listen, they vote, they witness, they accept roles assigned through seniority, custom, and sacred decree. Power moves through procedure. You sit near the outer wall while the chamber fills. Deities arrive in seance, each carrying an object connected with a particular duty. One bears a measuring rod, another holds a vessel of water. A third carries a tablet sealed with dark stone. These are not decorations. They represent obligations. A god of justice must judge. A god of grain must preserve growth. A god of wisdom must advise, even when advice troubles those who prefer simple obedience. The divine office shapes the one who holds it. Records confirm that ancient Mesopotamian religion connected gods with specific cities, natural forces, crafts, institutions, and areas of human life. These associations created a network of responsibilities rather than one undivided mass of divine power. No single deity governs everything. The system depends upon separation. One god controls the storm but not the moon. Another governs healing but not kingship. A third watches oath, while someone else protects the boundary stones marking fields. The universe is divided into duties because undivided power would be difficult to explain and even harder to trust. You hear the sound of a staff touching stone. A formal session begins. A dispute concerns a river whose course has shifted toward one city and away from another. Farmers downstream face dry fields. The upstream settlement celebrates unexpected abundance. Both communities have prayed, both claim divine favor. The council must decide whether the river should remain where it has moved or return toward its earlier channel. Enlil speaks from his assigned place. He argues that the change reflects a decree already expressed through nature. The river has moved, therefore the movement carries meaning. The god of wisdom disagrees. Natural events can reveal divine intention, but they can also create imbalance requiring correction. A flood may be powerful without being just. The sun god asks for testimony. Messengers present records of offerings, broken promises, canal maintenance, and disputes between the cities. The evidence does not reveal one innocent side and one guilty side. Reality is inconsiderately complicated. The council cannot solve the matter through anger alone. It must apply older principles. This is the hidden structure beneath the divine rule. The gods may command nature, yet they're expected to preserve balance, oath, rightful measure, and the continuity of life. These expectations function like law. They are not written by every god at each meeting. They already exist when the gathering begins. A council decree proves that even sacred decisions depend upon established forms. Witnesses appear, claims are examined, consequences are considered. The process matters, because raw power cannot create legitimacy by itself. Enlil could force the river into any channel. The question is whether he should. You study the measured lines across the floor. They resemble boundaries marked around fields, temple estates, and city territories. Ancient land disputes could become seership because water and soil determine survival. Surveyors used cords and rods to define property. Officials recorded transfers and confirmed ownership through seals. A boundary was practical. It was also sacred. Moving a marker dishonestly could provoke legal punishment and divine anger. Stones placed at borders sometimes carried curses against anyone who altered them. One quirky detail is that these curses could become extremely imaginative. The offender might be threatened with disease, failed harvests, social disgrace, and the hostility of numerous gods. Ancient legal warnings rarely lacked enthusiasm. Such inscriptions reveal how closely law and religion were joined. A boundary mattered because humans recognized it, and because divine witnesses were believed to protect it. The gods themselves, therefore, stand beneath principles they are expected to defend. If they ignore sacred limits, the entire system weakens. The open scholarly question concerns whether these cosmic laws were imagined as independent forces or as impressions of collective divine will. Perhaps the distinction was never absolute. A rule may exist because the gods established it long ago, yet once established, the rule can constrain later decisions. Human institutions behave similarly. A king creates a law. His successor must obey it, change it publicly, or reveal that law never mattered. The council faces the same difficulty. It may possess authority to alter order, but alteration carries consequences. If every decree changes according to anger, no office remains stable. The gods would then become powerful without becoming trustworthy. You hear low voices around the basin. The river dispute continues. A goddess connected with fertility asks how many families will lose crops under each proposal. A divine judge considers whether either city violated an oath. The answer remains mixed. Some farmers neglected shared canals. Some officials diverted water. Some families are innocent. The council chooses a divided solution. Part of the river will be redirected through new channels. Both cities must provide labor. The settlement that benefited from the shift must share grain during construction. No side receive complete victory. Balance is restored through obligation. Enlil accepts the decree, though it limits the simpler solution of force. His role remains powerful. but the system requires him to work within decisions shaped by other functions. This is not humiliation. It is containment through structure. A fringe interpretation imagines the Anunnaki as officials within a hidden administration governed by laws inherited from an unknown civilization. No accepted archaeological evidence supports that literal claim, yet the myths clearly present divine authority as organized. Ranks exist, tasks are assigned, boundaries matter, decisions require recognition. The gods resemble rulers, but also officers. This distinction changes the meaning of fear. Enlil may fear Anu because Anu stands above him. The council may fear something more lasting, the collapse of the system that gives each deity identity and purpose. Without order, a storm god becomes only storm, a judge becomes only force, a king becomes only a man with guards. The sacred structure turns power into office. Office turns obedience into legitimacy. You look again at the clear basin. The moonlight has shifted slightly, revealing words carved beneath the water. The signs are difficult to read, but their arrangement suggests an ancient formula. Measure must answer measure. Oath must answer oath. Power must preserve what grants it authority. The phrase may not belong to any surviving tablet. It feels true within the logic of the chamber. The gods are not masters of chaos. They are guardians against it. Their own freedom must therefore remain incomplete. This creates a quiet paradox. The more powerful a deity becomes, the more dangerous personal desire becomes. A minor spirit may harm one household. A great god can ruin kingdoms. Higher rank requires stronger restraint. The council exists partly to apply that restraint. You notice that every seat remains fixed to the floor. No god can move closer to the center during debate. No seat can be raised without altering the entire chamber. Enforces memory. Each member sees the others. Each decision takes place beneath observation. Absolute power prefers private rooms. Shared order requires witnesses. The divine scribe completes the river decree. The tablet will be sent through messengers toward temples in both cities. Priests will announce new obligations, and human workers will begin digging channels beneath the sun. The heavenly decision becomes earthly labor. This movement reveals the full system. Law descends through ranks. Responsibility spreads downward. Consequences rise upward through prayer, complaint, and omen. The structure connects gods, kings, officials, workers, rivers, and fields. No part stands alone? Perhaps this is why the council fears any being who might ignore the system. A force beyond duty would threaten more than individual gods. It would threaten meaning itself. If one power could erase every boundary, then names, offices, promises, and destinies would become temporary illusions. The Anunnaki may rule humanity, yet they also serve the order they preserve. You leave the circular hall as dawn reaches the opening above. Moonlight fades from the basin, replaced by a thin column of gold. The measured lines remain. The seats remain fixed. The water remains level. No decree can change the fact that every god enters this chamber already bound by something older than desire. A storm gathers beyond the horizon, but the air around you remains strangely still. You stand upon a high terrace where the city appears small beneath the darkening sky. Roofs cluster around courtyards. Canals divide fields into long strips. Temple walls rise above everything, firm and pale against the coming clouds. Enlil should command this moment. Wind belongs to him. Storm belongs to him. The pressure building above the plain should answer his will. Yet the clouds continue moving according to a pattern he does not seem to control. Their edges fold inward. Their shadows cross the fields. No decree changes their course. The possibility feels simple at first. Perhaps another god interferes. Perhaps a rival power has entered the sky. Then a more unsettling thought appears. Perhaps no one interferes. Perhaps the storm follows laws older than every divine throne. They can act. They cannot always undo. A decision spoken in council may become binding. A curse may continue even when its effects become regrettable. A destiny once assigned may resist personal desire. Power encounters structure. You hear thunder rolling across the plain. Enlil raises his staff, and the wind answers. Dust lifts from the terrace, reed roofs bend, birds scatter from the walls. Yet the storm does not stop. His command changes its shape, but not its existence. This distinction matters. A ruler may redirect a force without creating it. He may control part of a system while remaining unable to escape the system itself. Records confirm that Mesopotamian texts often describe destinies as assigned, fixed, or held through sacred decrees. Gods possess authority over these destinies, yet they also treat them with caution. Destiny is not casual speech. It carries weight beyond mood. A divine statement may reshape a city, a king, or an entire generation once established. The result becomes difficult to reverse without threatening the order that gives divine words their power. If every decree could be withdrawn easily, no decree would inspire fear. Therefore, even the gods become trapped by permanence. You enter a chamber where tablets rest inside sealed boxes. Each tablet bears names, offices, boundaries, and appointed outcomes. Some concern kingship, others concern cities, harvests, battles, and the length of human lives. The room resembles an archive of possibility narrowed into decision. A divine scribe stands near the shelves and does not look powerful. His robe is plain and his hands are stained with clay, yet his task carries unusual danger, because he preserves what authority has spoken. Memory limits power. A ruler can deny an earlier command. A written record can answer. One quirky detail from ancient archives is that scribes sometimes preserved several versions of the same event, each favoring a different ruler or temple. Truth could become crowded very quickly. Still, the existence of records created accountability. Contradictions remained visible. Later readers could compare claims, notice changes, and wonder why divine favor moved so conveniently toward the victorious city. The same difficulty reaches heaven. If Enlil declares one destiny today and another tomorrow, the tablets expose the change. His authority depends upon the belief that his words belong to order rather than impulse. He cannot control everything because he must remain consistent enough to be obeyed. You move deeper into the archive. At the rear stands a sealed chest without inscription. No divine name appears upon it. No seal identifies its owner. The scribe refuses to open it. He says only that the contents do not belong to any single god. This may be imagination, but the idea follows ancient logic. If destinies are assigned, something must preserve the rules governing assignment. If authority is granted, something must define what granting means. If gods possess offices, something must exist beyond office. Perhaps this deeper force is fate. Perhaps it is cosmic law. Perhaps it is an unnamed creator whose identity vanished when later gods inherited the world. Scholars continue debating whether Mesopotamian destiny should be understood as independent law, divine decision, or a combination of both. Different texts point in different directions. At times, gods seem to control fate directly. Elsewhere, they behave as though fate has already narrowed their choices. The uncertainty prevents a final answer. It also preserves the central fear. Enlil may command storms, kings, and human labor. Yet he cannot command the condition that makes consequence real. A storm destroys because water follows gravity. A wall collapses because mud brick weakens. A dynasty ends because rulers age, rivals gather, and loyalty changes. Divine language gives these events sacred meaning, but meaning does not erase their underlying patterns. As you return to the terrace, rain begins softly, striking the warm stone with scattered clicks. The scent of wet dust rises around you, sharp and clean. Enlil stands beneath the clouds. His robes move in the wind. For the first time, he appears less like the master of the storm and more like its interpreter. Perhaps this is what he cannot control. not one hidden enemy, not one secret god. The thing beyond him may be the structure of reality itself. A fringe interpretation proposes that an unknown supreme being ruled the Anunnaki from outside their visible hierarchy. No accepted archaeological evidence confirms such a figure. The theory remains popular because it gives a face to the final mystery. Human imagination prefers a hidden ruler over an impersonal law. A ruler can be understood. A law without origin is harder. If Enlil fears another being, then the hierarchy simply continues upward. There is always one stronger throne, one higher gate, and one more distant command. But if he fears necessity, then no throne can offer escape. Even Anu would remain bound. Even the highest council would serve conditions it did not create. This possibility makes every divine title feel temporary. Lord of Wind, Father of Heaven, Judge of Gods. Each title describes a role within existence, not ownership of existence. The unnamed creator, if such a presence exists, may not resemble a king, it may not speak, judge, or receive offerings. It may be the first cause hidden behind every later story. No temple could contain it. No statue could represent it. No priest could promise access. Perhaps ancient scribes avoided such an idea because religion depends upon relationship. People pray to beings who can hear, respond, and change events. An impersonal source offers no comfort. It gives no favorable omen. It accepts no sacrifice. It cannot be persuaded by music, incense, or beautifully arranged bread. This would be a very inconvenient god, yet philosophical thought often begins when familiar explanations fail. A flood occurs despite ritual. A good ruler dies young. A powerful city falls while its patron god still receives offerings. People then ask whether another order exists beyond divine favor. Perhaps the gods explain meaning rather than control every event. Perhaps the council governs within boundaries set by nature, time, and mortality. Perhaps divine fear reflects awareness of those boundaries. You watch rainwater gather along the terrace edge. Drops join into narrow streams, then fall toward the streets below. No command directs each drop. Their movement follows a quiet certainty older than kingship. Enlil can summon rain. He cannot make water rise without cause. I can destroy a city. He cannot prevent memory from judging the destruction. He can grant authorities. He cannot make borrowed authority permanent. What he cannot control may be consequence. This is more frightening than rebellion. A rebel can be punished. Consequence cannot. Every act changes the world. Every decree creates responses. Every punishment teaches fear, resentment, obedience, or resistance. The gods themselves become a part of the chain they begin. The storm reaches its full strength. Thunder rolls across the city, and rain strikes roofs in silver sheets. People hurry through streets, laughing, shouting, covering baskets, and pulling animals beneath shelter. Life continues beneath the divine weather. Enlil looks toward the clouds. No hidden face appears there. No voice names the power beyond. Only the storm moves according to command, law, chance, and forces no tablet explains completely. Perhaps this is the being he fears most. Not a rival seated upon another throne, not an enemy waiting behind a gate. The feared presence may be whatever remains when every name is removed. It may be fate. It may be time. It may be the silent source from which gods, humans, storms, and kings all receive their brief place. Enlil lowers his staff. The rain continues. You enter the celestial chamber while the last storm withdraws beyond the edge of the plain. Rainwater moves through the streets below, carrying dust, leaves, and fragments of broken reed toward the canals. The city breathes beneath a washed sky. Roofs shine faintly in the approaching dawn. Above that waking world, the council has gathered for the final judgment. Every seat is occupied. The great gods sit in measured silence, each wearing the signs of office assigned through ancient tradition. The divine scribe waits beside a fresh tablet, though no words have yet been pressed into its surface. Enlil stands before them, His crown appears heavy beneath the cold light. The staff in his hand still carries the authority of stormed kingship and sacred command. Yet he does not speak. At the far end of this chamber stands the highest throne. It is empty. No curtain hides its occupant, a messenger announces a arrival. The seat waits openly beneath a ceiling patterned with stars. The council does not seem surprised. Perhaps the emptiness is expected. You move closer, drawn by the unsettling calm surrounding it. The throne bears marks of age, but no sign of ownership. Its arms are polished by no visible hand. Anu sits nearby rather than upon it. This arrangement changes everything. The senior god of heaven occupies a place of immense honor, yet even he faces the vacant seat. His posture suggests recognition rather than possession. The throne belongs to something else. Records confirm that ancient Mesopotamian theology changed across many centuries. Divine ranks shifted as cities gained political influence. Priesthoods reorganized tradition, and new empires elevated their preferred gods. No single diagram captures every period. Still, the traditions preserve a recurring idea that authority descends through levels. Gods grant offices. Councils witness decisions. Destinies are fixed through formal acts. The source behind those acts remains difficult to name. Enlil finally raises his eyes. He addresses Anu with respect, asking whether the empty seat will ever be claimed. The question sounds simple, but the entire assembly listens as though a sealed chamber has been opened. Anu answers carefully. He says the throne is not empty because its ruler is absent. It is empty because no visible form can contain what it represents. The words pass quietly through the hall. No god moves. Enlil asks whether the presence beyond the throne judges them. Anu replies that judgment already exists within consequence, memory, and the order connecting every act to what follows. This answer offers no comfort. A judge can forgive. Consequence merely unfolds. You look toward the tablet beside the divine scribe. Its surface remains smooth because nothing spoken here can reduce the mystery to a decree. The council has reconstructed a system without finding its first architect. Each god holds a function. Each function serves a balance. Each balance rests upon principles older than the names used to describe them. The hidden sovereign may therefore be no sovereign at all. It may be the law that keeps heaven from collapsing into appetite. It may be the measure that turns force into authority. It may be time, which reduces kings and temples to buried foundations while continuing without grief. The open scholarly debate concerns whether ancient divine hierarchies developed from political institutions, inherited religious traditions, or attempts to explain natural order. No single interpretation excludes the others. Kingship gave people a language for heavenly authority. Nature offered patterns of permanence and change. Older rituals supplied sacred forms whose original meanings were sometimes forgotten. Together, they produced a cosmos filled with offices, councils, ancestors, and boundaries. You hear the distant sound of water dripping from the roof opening. Each drop lands inside a shallow basin at the center of the chamber. Circles move outward across the surface, touch the stone edge, then disappear. No god commands them. Still, they follow order. One quirky detail from ancient temple life is that damaged sacred objects were not always discarded casually. They could be buried, stored, or treated with respect because their former role remained meaningful. Even a broken symbol carried memory. The empty throne may function in the same way. Perhaps it once belonged to a forgotten deity whose cult vanished before writing preserved the name. Later priests may have retained the seat while losing the identity attached to it. This possibility is entirely human. Institutions often preserve forms longer than explanations. A ceremony continues because ancestors performed it. A title survives after its first duty disappears. A throne remains because removing it would admit that no one remembers who once sat there. Enlil approaches the vacant seat. The council watches him cross the floor. He does not climb the final steps. He stops at the boundary where the stone changes color. His face holds no open terror. Instead, you see recognition. I understands that occupying the throne would not make him supreme. It would reveal that he had mistaken position for origin. His authority depends upon remaining within the system. To claim the source would destroy the legitimacy he seeks to preserve. A fringe interpretation imagines that this hidden occupant was an unknown ruler feared by the Anunnaki and later removed from written history. No accepted archaeological evidence confirms such a concealed being, yet the theory continues because mystery naturally attracts personality. People prefer to imagine someone behind the curtain. Someone can have motives. Someone can return. Someone can finally explain why every lesser ruler trembled. An impersonal structure is harder to accept. It offers no face, biography, or secret. Still, the oldest fear may not require a being. Enlil fears whatever can make his command meaningless, and fears the withdrawal of recognition, or fears a council that no longer accepts his judgment, or fears humanity surviving his punishments, preserving stories in which his authority appears flawed, and fears time carrying his temples into ruin. These fears gather within the empty throne. Anu watches without speaking. Perhaps he shares them. The highest named god also depends upon memory, ritual, and inherited order. His distance protects him, but it does not place him beyond forgetting. Deities can abandon the sky, Father. Priests can elevate another deity. Languages can change until sacred titles become uncertain sounds pressed into unread clay. Beneath, change continues. The council slowly rises. No final decree is issued because the mystery cannot be settled through voting. The divine scribe covers the blank tablet with cloth. Its unwritten surface becomes the most honest record in the chamber. There is no name. There is no conclusion. The gods leave according to rank, passing through bronze doors toward their separate domains. The judge returns to the sun. The moon god returns to measured night. The wisdom god descends toward hidden waters. Enlil remains last. He turns toward the empty throne once more. Perhaps he sees an older creator. Perhaps he sees fate. Perhaps he sees only the truth that every ruler serves something beyond personal desire. Then he leaves. The chamber grows quiet. Below, the city awakens. Bakers open ovens. Workers lift baskets. Priests prepare offerings. Children step into wet streets and watch their reflections break inside shallow pools. No one knows what occurred above. They continue living beneath gods who may themselves live beneath an unknown order. The throne remains waiting. Dust will eventually settle upon it. Lamps will go dark. Walls will crack. And the chamber may vanish beneath the earth. Still, the question will survive. Who stands above the Lord of Command? Anu offers one answer. Fate offers another. The empty throne offers none. And perhaps the deepest fear within the council is that no final name was ever given. The night settles gently over the ancient plain. You no longer need to search the dark chamber or study the silent throne. The gods have withdrawn into their distant places, and their unanswered questions can remain where old questions belong. The canals carry moonlight between sleeping fields. Reeds bend softly beside the water. A warm breeze passes over mud brick walls, stirring loose cloth near an open doorway. Inside the houses, families rest. A worker's hands lie still after a day of lifting soil. A child sleeps beside a small clay figure placed for protection. A temple lamp burns lower, its flame becoming softer with every passing moment. Nothing asks you to decide who ruled above Enlil. Perhaps it was Anu, seated in the farthest heaven. Perhaps it was an unnamed creator whose memory faded before the first surviving tablet was written. Perhaps the feared presence was never a being at all. It may have been time, consequence, or the quiet law that prevents power from becoming complete. You can let each possibility drift away. The stars continue their measured paths without needing an answer. The river moves through darkness, carrying reflections that appear, tremble, and disappear. Your breathing becomes slower. The temple walls fade into shadow. The bronze gates close without sound. The empty throne grows distant, then small, then almost impossible to see. The calm plain remains. Long before recorded history, people looked upward and wondered whether the gods also looked beyond themselves. Their question still moves through the silence, but it no longer needs to trouble you. Rest beside the ancient water. Let the reeds whisper beyond the city. Let the forgotten council return to darkness. And perhaps, somewhere beyond every throne, every name, and every surviving story, the final presence remains quiet. And perhaps the story is not yet complete.